Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as YUJI Itadori, Part 2. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
Blocking a punch, Itadori quickly grabbed Todoa's wrist and brought him down in a takedown, but before he could continue, a sharp kick pushed his head up. Itadori staggered but recovered his posture in time to pull back his torso to dodge a punch, immediately countering with an elbow that hit Todoa's jaw squarely. He's extraordinarily cunning. Todo spat out a little blood as he thought. And raising his defense as Itadori charged towards him, he was surprised when, instead of a punch, a kick with both legs hit his arms, his defense opening up and causing his face to be hit precisely. And that damage. But before he could recover, Itadori was around him in an instant and grabbed his waist, dropping him in a suplex. Compares to mine. Boom. Receiving a kick while still on the ground, Todo flew away until he hit a tree. What's more, his flow of cursed energy is very precise. It's almost unbelievable that he's only a novice. Getting up, Todo wiped the dirt off his body. But still. Narrowing his eyes as Itadori charged in, Todo readied himself and skillfully blocked a punch aimed at his ribcage. Something's missing. Itadori's eyes widened as Todo drove his body into the ground purely with the strength of his arm, his teeth clenching as his back hit the ground. My friend, you haven't seen it yet, have you? Pushing the sorcerer away with both feet, Itadori stood up in confusion. What? What are you talking about? You haven't witnessed the black flash yet, have you? Itadori blinked at the man's words, remembering that this technique existed. Black flash, basically the technique that made Itadori a danger to most of his opponents. How could he forget it? No, it was normal for him to forget. He had been too busy training with Gojo to take the time to think about it. As far as he could remember, the black flash occurred when a distortion of space occurred due to cursed energy being applied within a few milliseconds, or even less. This greatly increased the power of the attack, but it depended mainly on luck, since no sorcerer was able to use the technique at will. An enormous amount of concentration was also required, but luck was a predominant factor in getting this technique right. It wasn't something that could simply be learned. And what's it got to do with you? But wanting to hear what Todo had to say about it, he asked. You already have wonderful control of your cursed energy, my friend. I can't teach you what you already know, but I can guide you so that you can finally witness the black flash. Believe me. Your growth will skyrocket after that. Itadori raised an eyebrow at that. Aoi Todo had believed too much in false memories. This was also something Itadori needed to study later. After all, it was a strange phenomenon that he didn't remember there being any explanation for. And how do I do it? It's not something that can be taught so simply, my friend. It's more like being chosen. Itadori nodded, already knowing this information. But I'm sure you'll be chosen, my friend. Concentrate. Enter a state of total concentration, and release everything you have at once. Do that, and you will succeed. Todo raised his defense, the cursed energy exploding from his body for a moment, before returning to him. Come on. Try me. Itadori was surprised by the request. Try now? In the middle of their fight? That could be dangerous. All right. But in the end, there would be no better time for it. Besides, it would help him during the fight against Hanami. So, closing his eyes, Itadori raised his fist in front of his face. He needed to concentrate in a way he had never concentrated before. At that point, it was a little difficult to do so. After all, he had a lot on his mind. A huge weight on his shoulders, and even the memories of a past life that he would be unable to live again. It was simply difficult to concentrate in the face of all this. But throughout his life, he had moments when he could abandon everything, so that he could feel free of everything, at least for a few moments. When he was next to his wife, just enjoying the scenery. When he was in space, observing the vast universe with its infinite stars. When he was just spending time with his grandfather. At times like these, he felt hypnotized. As if nothing else mattered. A state of focus and complete peace that could be achieved in just a few moments. And with all these moments being recalled in his mind, he prepared himself. His eyes opened, and free of any restraints that had previously been on his body, he let his body deal with everything on its own. And with a single lunge, he covered the distance between them, his fist rising as the glint of awareness in his gaze disappeared for a single millisecond. Time enough for him to unleash an attack with total concentration. You did it, my brother. Boom. Black flash. Electricity rang out as black lightning exploded all over the place. Todo, receiving the punch full on, clenched his teeth as he flew backwards, his body crashing into the trees without stopping. Itadori, frozen as he felt the cursed energy overflowing from his body, looked at his hands in fascination. How incredible. It's as if controlling my cursed energy is as easy as breathing. Magnificent. Ugh. Hearing a groan coming from the trees, Itadori turned to see Todo returning with the skin on his forearms reddened from the damage. You reduced the damage at the last moment, didn't you, my friend? Itadori nodded. After all, he could tell that if he used his full strength, he would surely break several of Todo's bones. You really? Todo, feeling tears threaten to run down his face, ran towards Itadori. You really are my best friend. Wait. We were fighting, have you forgotten? Hey. No hugging. When the sky was suddenly filled with darkness, Todo and Itadori immediately noticed the anomaly. There shouldn't be a barrier in the tournament, so Todo stayed on alert. While Itadori, knowing that the curse attack had just begun, looked around while trying to track the cursed energy of the other students. And it wasn't long before he noticed a cursed energy standing out among the rest. And he clearly remembered this energy signature from months before. The cursed energy of a special grade curse. Hanami, a curse born out of fear of natural disasters on Earth. What oppression. I can feel it even though I'm far away. You felt it too, didn't you? Todo, standing next to the boy, asked as he looked in the direction Hanami's cursed energy was coming from. It's an attack. Itadori pulled up the sleeves of his jacket, his eyes narrowing as he squeezed his fingers, feeling and appreciating the new control he had of his cursed energy. It's the same thing that happened on one of my missions, when a sentient curse attacked a school. I see. Snapping his fingers, he cracked a smile as he stood next to his best friend. Then we must move, my brother. Itadori smiled at this, and in the blink of an eye, disappeared along with the first-degree sorcerer. Megumi had faltered. It was his fault that Maki had been captured by the curse, and he had practically exhausted his reserves of cursed energy. If it hadn't been for his slip, it wouldn't have happened. Shit. Clenching his teeth, Megumi clasped his hands together, about to make another invocation. But even if he had to destroy himself, he couldn't leave it at that. He, as the one with the smallest burden, had no right to give up so easily. He wouldn't let exhaustion allow him to witness a companion die, not again. That's enough, Megumi. But stopping him at the last second, Maki ordered as she struggled to keep her neck from strangling. We've done our bit. Time to change teams. Boom. Hanami, taken completely by surprise, didn't react when she was hit by a fist to the top of her head, her body being crushed against the ground. You won't get away this time, plant head. Megumi's eyes widened when he realized that those responsible for the attack were Todo and Itadori, their hands still clasped together, as if he could perform a summoning at any moment. Todo, jumping up and holding an injured Maki, turned to Itadori, who was in position in front of Hanami, who had already retreated at this point. Can you do it, brother? Todo asked, to which Itadori nodded with a confident smile. Itadori, stop. That curse is too strong. Struggling to get up, Megumi stumbled and fell onto his knee, the exhaustion more noticeable than he had previously believed. Panda, Take these two to the other side of the barrier. Todo ordered when Panda suddenly appeared. While Todo was giving instructions, Itadori turned to Megumi, who was looking rather tired and dejected. Fushiguro, don't worry. To put it bluntly, Itadori flashed a confident smile, which made Megumi clench his teeth. His mind went to the memories of that boarding school, that special grade curse, and how he had left Itadori behind. He felt useless again. But this time, he didn't want to leave it at that. Itadori, I'm not going to abandon you this time. Standing up on weak legs, Megumi breathed heavily as he faced his companion firmly. I don't want to let what happened at boarding school happen again. The silence became palpable between the two, and Itadori, turning with a firm gaze to Megumi, stared at him for a few seconds before finally declaring. Then become stronger. A thud. These words hit Megumi hard, and his eyes widened in surprise at that moment. Become stronger? Was he so weak that even someone with less than 3 months' experience as a sorcerer could tell him that? Looking at Itadori's back, who had turned his attention to the curse, Megumi clenched his fingers tightly, his teeth clenching as his eyes trembled. Faced with that statement, Megumi understood. Yes, he was weak. Picking up the dark sorcerer, Panda placed him on Maki's shoulder and began to walk away quickly. Don't die. And as he was led away to safety, Megumi left these last words for Itadori, the boy thanking him for the concern in his mind, while staying focused on the curse. My friend, I'll let you fight this curse alone. Todo stepped out of the shallow pond they were in, crossing his arms as he faced Itadori seriously. Let's see how much you've grown. You got it. Clenching his fist tightly, Itadori stepped forward, Hanami standing firm in the presence of the two sorcerers. What's that? Hanami wondered as he looked closely at Sukuna's receptacle. Why are they so confident? The two of them are clearly weaker than me. Seeing Itadori begin to approach in calm steps, exuding confidence from his being, Hanami raised his palm, beginning to weave a wooden ball through his cursed energy. No, I shouldn't think like that. That man may have a dangerous technique, I can't let my guard down like that. As for Sukuna's vessel, that man said he would face me alone. If I can leave him out of the battle, then I can concentrate on just one. It's okay, there's no danger. Boom. Hanami, who was devising a plan to confront the two sorcerers, clenched her teeth as Itadori suddenly disappeared, a kick hitting her square in the jaw and sending her flying away from the tremendous impact. What kind of force is that? Hanami opened her mouth as a little blood trickled from between her lips, her feet landing firmly on the ground as she steepled her fingers to stop her from going any further. My strength has increased a lot. Itadori looked at the curse with an excited smile. I should have learned the black flash before. Hanami prepared herself, and weaving 2 more wooden balls, she prepared herself as Itadori exploded towards her. I can't keep getting hit like this. Raising her only arm, Hanami blocked a punch that came from her side, the impact coursing through her body and making her grit her teeth. Oops. But while the curse was about to counterattack, she didn't react when Itadori punched her arm and pushed it up, leaving her with a completely open defense. All right. I'll resist the attack and counterattack straight away. It was with the curse planned, but as she watched Itadori throw his fist towards her belly, she noticed something at the last moment. Something she could never have predicted. Black. An Avenger power. Flash. Boom. Electricity rang out as black lightning flew in all directions, Itadori's fist smashing into the curse's stomach and making it choke, its body flying backwards before it stopped and clutched its abdomen urgently. That punch was too powerful. Hanami clenched her teeth as she wiped the blood dripping from her lips. Like that boy. Itadori shook his fist, his eyes narrowed as he stared at the curse with intensity. Can it be that strong? Itadori prepared for another onslaught. He felt quite satisfied with his increase in power after witnessing the black flash. He could never have expected such a leap. He could now understand why Todo said that the distance between a sorcerer who hadn't witnessed the black flash and one who had, was like heaven and earth. Even his cursed energy reserves had increased, and his control became even more refined. At that point, he was feeling very confident. Maybe this was a side effect of using the Black Flash, but who cared? What mattered at the moment was that he was able to exorcise this curse. Alright, my friend. I've seen enough. Todo, approaching Itadori, stood by his side with a proud smile. You've become much stronger. Now, the cursed energy of the curse has weakened. It's the perfect time for us to exorcise it. Itadori nodded, raising his palm at the same time as Todo, a pose well known to the first-grade sorcerer who was used by his favorite idol. Alright, let's do this. Hanami gritted her teeth, and tearing off the cloth that covered her left arm, she revealed a black arm. It seems that against you, I'll have to get serious, Hanami declared, although no words were actually vocalized. Let's continue. Itadori and Todo jumped almost instinctively as giant roots emerged from the ground. Itadori, who was carefully observing the cursed energy signatures around him, immediately turned when Hanami emerged from among the roots in an attempt to attack them stealthily. Boom! And hitting her with a precise punch, he pushed her back to the ground, the roots disappearing instantly, revealing it to be a manifestation of the cursed energy of the curse itself. Todo, throw me towards her. As they both were in free fall, Itadori asked his friend, who promptly reacted by holding him by the legs and spinning him in the air, throwing him towards the curse, who had just landed firmly on the ground, only to look up to see the boy flying towards her like a bullet. Damn! She cursed, and unable to escape fast enough, she was hit by a punch squarely in her face. Black Flash. The black rays spread, and Hanami was pushed back with a wound gushing blood from her face. But as she concentrated cursed energy to heal herself, she immediately jumped back when Itadori lunged from a curtain of dust. Even though I'm taking damage. Hanami raised her guard, but when she saw that fist coming, she immediately realized it wouldn't be enough. Why am I enjoying this so much? Boom! Black Flash. The punch exploded the curse's left arm when it hit her defense, piercing through it and hitting her solar plexus accurately. Idiot. Spitting blood, the curse channeled cursed energy and caused numerous sharp roots to emerge from the ground in an attempt to impale Itadori. Know your place. Clap. But before the roots could reach him, Hanami was shocked when the boy simply disappeared, his instinct screaming for her to turn immediately. Black. But it was already too late. Flash. The punch came accurately in her ribs, her mouth opening as blood was expelled from her throat. Cursed. The curse growled, and turning around, she tried to counterattack Itadori. Don't forget about me. But before she could, Todo appeared with a precise punch to her jaw, pushing the curse's head upwards. Hanami gritted her teeth, and pushing her head down, she intercepted a punch from Itadori, grabbing his wrist while immediately attacking Todo in front of her with her fist. Clap. But surprising her, instead of Todo, she suddenly found herself facing Sukuna's vessel once again. Again? Black Flash. And when her fist hit the boy's face, Itadori counterattacked with a powerful punch that hit the curse in the chest with enough force to make her fly backwards. I understand now. Hanami spat blood, her legs trembling as she quickly regained her posture. This isn't Sukuna's vessel's technique, but this man's. Referring to Todo, the curse looked at the two of them cautiously. I've suffered enough damage already, I can't prolong this much longer, or I may be truly exorcised. Hanami wiped the blood from her lips, her teeth clenching as she seemed to become determined. No. I have to endure, or Mahito won't have enough time to complete our plan. Hanami positioned herself, with Itadori and Todo doing the same. Come, Jujutsu sorcerers. Hanami promptly blocked the fists of the two, but before she could counterattack, she was confused when her position was suddenly swapped, a fist hitting her chest accurately. He switched my position. Clap. But as she still recovered from the blow, a kick hit her shoulder, making her legs bend slightly, allowing a fist to hit her face accurately. Hey, curse! Todo called, and pushing the curse back with a kick, he brought his palms together. My technique involves swapping places with a target. Clap. Receiving a precise kick, Hanami staggered. And it activates. Clap. Every time I clap. Boom. Black flash. Itadori broke through Hanami's defense with his fist, hitting her in the face and causing her to stumble backwards. But the boy didn't seem to intend to stop as he covered the distance in a single second, his fist hitting the curse's stomach. Black flash. Hanami choked, but didn't have enough time to recover from the damage when a spinning kick hit her in the jaw with enough force to push her to the ground. Black flash. 3 in a row. Todo watched in amazement. Black. Hanami put her elbows on the ground, and about to get up, she urgently had to use her forearm to defend against another kick. Flash. Boom. Being kicked like a soccer ball, Hanami flew until she collided with a tree. Seeing that, Todo felt tears streaming from his eyes. It was true that the black flash was not a phenomenon that could be controlled. It was extremely rare, even for those in the upper echelons. There were few sorcerers with a consecutive count of black flashes, and most of the time, it happened due to sheer luck. But sometimes, the phenomenon seemed to somehow bless some individuals, allowing them to use this technique more often than any other cursed energy user. Of course, the phenomenon had no sentience and couldn't choose who would be blessed. But regarding Yuji Itadori, there was something different. Something Todo could perceive. He felt that somehow, the phenomenon seemed to have chosen Itadori carefully. Hanami got up, and feeling her arms tremble, she seemed quite tired after receiving so many attacks. She was reaching her limit, and the two sorcerers noticed that. They didn't need to speak to each other to decide the next move. Here they come. Hanami immediately turned when Itadori and Todo advanced, the curse's attention fixed on the boy, who at that moment, was undeniably the most dangerous. Clap. And waiting for the swap, the curse immediately turned to see Itadori draw a blade, raising it and bringing it down on her arm. What's this? Are you underestimating me? Watching the blade approach her arm more and more, the curse prepared a wooden ball in her other hand. A blade will never be able to cut me. Slice. But with those confident thoughts, Hanami was unable to react when the blade pierced through her arm like butter. Shock ran through her body, and seeing Itadori smirk confidently, the curse tried to jump back to escape. Gotcha. But before she could go any further, Todo quickly intercepted her, holding her by the waist. Let go of me. The curse hit the sorcerer's face with an elbow, but Todo seemed determined to hold her. And while she was held, her attention turned forward when she saw Itadori advancing towards her, Sukuna's vessel retracting his fist in anticipation. Bye-bye. Clap. As the boy reached her, the curse felt Todo disappear, her arms lowering to block the attack that, at this point, was impossible to escape. Black flash. Boom. The fist shattered the curse's two arms, the ground beneath her feet cracking as the attack hit the curse's stomach squarely, sending Hanami flying away like a shot. Nice one, brother. Todo stopped beside Itadori, a smile on his lips. But still not enough. This curse is extremely resilient. Itadori sighed as he saw Hanami struggling to get up from the debris of several trees. But at this point, she's out of breath. I think even escaping is impossible now. She only has one option. Hanami, unfurling the flower on her shoulder, surprised the two sorcerers when she crouched down and placed her palm on the ground, nature around her starting to die at a frightening pace. My technique steals the energy from plants and converts it into cursed energy, but the energy doesn't come to me. It all goes to this flower. Itadori realized where this was going, his eyes narrowing as he stepped in front of Todo. But with your technique, avoiding it would be too easy. So, I'm left with only one thing. The curse spread her arms, cursed energy dancing around her body as if it could explode at any moment. Todo. The man turned to Itadori when he called him. Trust me. Todo didn't understand the meaning behind the boy's words, but he didn't have to wait long to decipher them. Because as the cursed energy threatened to explode, Itadori clasped his hands together for a moment, cursed energy concentrating entirely in his hands. Itadori, assuming a combat stance, grinned disdainfully. Domain expansion. Domain expansion. Todo widened his eyes at seeing this, his mouth opening in complete shock at the scene about to unfold. Ceremonial Sea of Light. I haven't fully mastered it yet, but it'll be enough. Hunting territory. The howl of a wolf was the last thing Hanami heard. Flashback. And to think that you would develop your own innate domain. In the middle of a snow-covered forest, an incessant snowstorm dominated the surroundings. In the middle of what should have been a clearing, now taken over by the blizzard, a Gojo Satoru was standing, his head turning from side to side as he seemed quite curious about his surroundings. That's extraordinary, Yuji. Gojo spoke with great sincerity in his voice, his head turning downward so that he could see his own hands. I feel that my induction of cursed energy has decreased significantly, so is that the effect of your domain? Feeling his ability to emit cursed energy reduced, Gojo noticed with a small smile. He still didn't know how Itadori's domain worked, but this effect alone was quite impressive. He felt that his ability to use cursed energy had been reduced by at least 30%, and it didn't seem to be something that could be circumvented, since it wasn't really a guaranteed hit. It was certainly something to be praised. I really can't say. Emerging from the blizzard, Itadori stopped in front of his teacher, his arms crossed as he looked around as curious as Gojo. I thought that some kind of information would pop into my head, but that's not the case. I'm as lost as you are, sensei. Satoru scratched his chin thoughtfully. An innate technique was something imprinted on the body from birth and manifested at a young age. A person should have, even if only a little, a sense of how their technique works from the moment it manifests itself. But that didn't seem to be the case with Itadori, who, strangely enough, had manifested his innate technique at the age of 15. Don't worry about it. The information will be burned into your body over time, but until then, I have new training for you. Gojo cracked a smile, which made Itadori wince a little. You're going to practice your domain until you understand how it works. Break. But, surprising them both, the barrier crumbled as Gojo finished speaking, Itadori falling to his knees as sweat poured down his face. Shit, that uses up too much cursed energy. Gojo observed this in silence, before finally saying. You can hold it for 30 seconds. That's good, it'll be more than enough. When the domains expanded, a conflict between the territories soon broke out. Hanami couldn't allow Itadori to overpower her. She understood well that, at that point, she would certainly be exorcised if she lost the fight. The dispute between domains, even more so when there was a difference between them, didn't take long. The more refined domain would quickly devour the other's barrier. And at that moment, the most refined domain was certainly Hanami's. But there were a few factors that made the winner of that contest indefinite. Hanami had taken too much damage during her fight against the two sorcerers. That alone shouldn't have diminished the curse's cursed energy output to the point where she lost to such an inexperienced boy. But the boy's punches were different. She felt her energy weaken with each successful black flash. She certainly hadn't expected that either of them would be able to use a domain expansion, and unfortunately, she would have to pay for her carelessness. Hanami, feeling the dispute approaching its end, thought with clear fear. Am I being defeated? If it had been a day earlier, Itadori wouldn't have had a hope in hell of beating Hanami, especially in a domination match. But thanks to the Black Flash, and his body operating at 120% of its maximum potential, he felt more than capable of it. His production of cursed energy was greater than ever, and he felt in harmony with it like never before. Even after Gojo's training, he still didn't have the confidence to expand his domain freely, at least not when facing a special grade of curse. But thanks to his new understanding of cursed energy, he no longer feared it. He was able to exorcise Hanami. Feeling her grip falter, Hanami was shocked when she felt her barrier being shattered, darkness covering her for a moment, before she found herself in the middle of a heavy snowfall that threatened to engulf her at any moment. She had lost. "What is it?" she asked as she felt her cursed energy weaken, her teeth clenching as she looked around in awe. "I just need to survive. He certainly won't be able to keep his hold for long." But as the curse took position, his mouth dropped open as a fist smashed into his stomach, his body flying through the forest like a bullet. "Hey, plant head." Hanami, who was struggling to get up at this point, turned to Itadori while spitting blood. That punch was stronger than any other. "It's time for the hunt." Itadori, letting the cursed energy flow from his fists to the ground, slowly began to approach the curse, his gaze emitting an orange glow that made him quite menacing in the midst of the storm. Hanami, who had struggled to recover from that injury, clenched her teeth as she stepped back. Boom! But just as the curse was about to retreat quickly, she was shocked when Itadori swept the distance between them in the blink of an eye, his arms rising to block a powerful kick that sent her backwards. "My expansion of dominance turns the entire environment around me into my hunting ground." Hanami, feeling her arms break, immediately concentrated on healing them, her head turning as the boy suddenly began to speak. "There are some effects I should mention to you." Itadori raised his hand and showed his index finger. "First, there is a reduction in the cursed energy output of the target I select. The percentage will depend on how weakened the target is. And secondly..." Boom! Hanami choked as his solar plexus was hit by a powerful punch, black electricity exploding from the attack as Itadori retracted his fist with a hardened expression. "During my hunt, my cursed energy production and physical attributes improve gradually, which means..." Holding Hanami by the wrist, Itadori hit her with 3 consecutive punches, before knocking her away with an elbow to the chest. "The longer this hunt goes on, the stronger I'll become." Itadori watched Hanami spit blood with little expression, her imposing body towering over the curse, even though she was considerably taller than him. "Why are you telling me this?" Hanami, keeping a tight grip on her chest, asked as she struggled to stand. She sensed that in addition to the absurd strength behind the boy's attacks, there was something else, which seemed to be weakening his cursed energy more and more. She felt she needed to buy as much time as possible. But Itadori realized the intent of the curse, his fist exploding towards her and hitting her defense hard enough to send her flying into some trees. "It makes the strengthening process a little quicker." Hanami stood up from the pieces of wood with clenched teeth, blood dripping down her chin as she quickly reset her arms. "Foolish child." Curse cursed, his hand opening as a wooden ball formed. But as she prepared to advance, Itadori covered the distance, the curse sending the wooden ball exploding into thorns. "Even if you've weakened my cursed energy." Itadori blocked the thorns with ease, quickly punching them away to continue his advance. But the moment he took it out of his field of vision, his eyes widened as he noticed the glow of the flower on Hanami's shoulder increase. "It doesn't mean that the energy from the plants I converted was too..." Itadori gritted his teeth and immediately raised his defense as he retreated. "At this distance, I won't go wrong." The curse reverberated, the cursed energy concentrated in the flower becoming chaotic for a moment, before being completely released in a strong burst of energy that advanced towards the boy. "Die, Jujutsu sorcerer." Boom! The attack hit hard, the smoke rising and spreading throughout the site, before being quickly dissipated by the strong winds of the blizzard. Hanami's chest rose and fell intensely, an indication of her exhausted state. "His domain hasn't fallen apart, but he's certainly weaker after this attack. I can defeat him and run away straight away." But as the curse prepared to continue its attack, in order to end it while the boy was supposed to be bewildered by the attack, she froze when the ground suddenly shook. What was that? The curse felt the atmosphere shake once again, and turning quickly, she conjured up 3 wooden balls that floated around her. That pressure. The curse felt fear run through her body, her mouth opening and closing as she looked around cautiously. Where is it coming from? Hanami, stopping when a shadow hovered over her body, slowly turned to see a huge figure towering over her. A giant wolf? Curse questioned fearfully and quickly threw his wooden balls towards the wolf, surprised when the creature just swallowed the attacks as if they were nothing. That creature is dangerous. Hanami realized and jumped back, but again, she was taken by surprise when the wolf lunged forward in a frightening display of speed, her teeth clenching as she pushed its body aside. But her dodging proved to be too slow when the wolf bit past her, her right arm being torn off in one fell swoop. Freaking animal dash. The curse, holding the site of the bite, which was now gushing blood, tried to heal him as quickly as possible. Black. But while she was concentrating on the animal, Hanami didn't notice when an Itadori with cuts all over its body emerged from the snow behind her, its head turning just in time to see Sukuna's receptacle sketching a huge toothy grin. Flash. The punch hit hard, and black lightning flew all over the place, the curse flying away as the domain suddenly shattered. Shit. Itadori felt his legs weaken, his eyes half open as blood oozed from his wounds. I faltered. He grumbled, the cursed energy in his body weakening as he watched the curse collide with some dead trees. 2 minutes, that's a new record. He smiled to himself, and taking a deep breath, he concentrated on the curse, which was rising from the wreckage with difficulty. Brother. Todo, who had escaped the collision of domains moments before the barriers expanded, approached Itadori with concern. Are you all right? Seeing the state of his best friend, who had wounds all over his body, he couldn't help but worry. The curse hit me precisely, but most of the injuries are superficial. In comparison, she's much worse off than I am. Itadori explained. I'm more exhausted by the expenditure of cursed energy than injured. That's good, great job. All praise for the boy, a proud smile on his lips. Now, leave that to your best friend. Todo snapped his fingers, and about to advance against the bruised curse, he stopped when the barrier around the forest finally broke down. Oh, looks like the party's over. Gojo Satoru had arrived for the battle. The truth was that Itadori was unable to expand his domain efficiently, let alone use it in combat. The Black Flash was the main reason this was possible, and yet Itadori was unable to eliminate Hanami. His domain needed to last a long time, and Yuji wasn't able to maintain it for more than a minute, which made its strengthening effect almost insignificant. His domain had 3 effects known to him until now. First, the selected target will have its emission of cursed energy reduced according to the injuries it suffered before the domain, this being the guaranteed hit of the expansion. Second, over time, Itadori will gradually improve his physical power and his emission of cursed energy. Third, some specific elemental techniques will be rendered useless in the domain. A Shikigami also seemed to live in his domain, but this was the first time Itadori had seen him. It looked like a giant white wolf, and considering that it devoured the curse arm in one go, it must have been strong. If he wanted to use his innate domain more efficiently, he would have to increase his reserves of cursed energy, and there was only one way for him at the moment. Devour the rest of Sukuna's fingers. Looks like the big man has arrived. Todo commented with a small smile. Itadori, turning his gaze to the sky, noticed Gojo disappearing, his eyes returning to Hanami, who seemed to be trying to stop the bleeding from his arm. Or at least what was left of it. What have you done? Hanami asked urgently, her head turning towards Itadori. Why can't I heal my arm? The bleeding seemed to gradually subside, but there were no signs that his arm would return, healing only to the point where his arm had been torn off. That's new. Itadori smiled slightly. I need to learn more about it. Damn it, it doesn't matter. With disdain, the curse placed its remaining hand on the ground, the roots slowly starting to cover it. It's time to get out of here. Don't even think about it. Itadori growled, but before he could advance, Todo stopped him. Easy there, brother. Stay back, or you'll turn to dust. Itadori blinked, but quickly understood the reason for those words when the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, his head turning to see a strange purple light appearing in the distance in the forest. Shit, that's not going to be enough. Clenching his teeth, Itadori pointed his finger in the direction of Hanami, who seemed desperate to get away. This will be the second time I've used it today. Letting the cursed energy dance in his hand, Itadori narrowed his eyes in preparation. I hope it's enough. Dismantle. Hanami raised her head as she felt a surge of energy appear in front of her, but before she could question what was about to happen, a cut appeared on her neck, blood gushing from the wound and making her quickly clench it. A fatal mistake, because the instant she focused on healing the cut, a huge orb of purple energy appeared beside her, its mouth opening as she desperately covered her wooden body. Itadori and Todo watched as the ground was torn apart by the energy sphere, leaving nothing behind but a crack that opened in the ground. But Todo wasn't impressed by this. He had seen the cut suddenly appear on Hanami, and he immediately connected it with Itadori. Brother, that cut was you? But when he turned to speak to the boy, he was startled to see him plummet to the ground. Hey, brother. Brother, hang in there. Brother. You became friends with that gorilla pretty quickly, didn't you? In Megumi's room, the boy was meeting Nobara and Itadori while they enjoyed a pizza. Itadori had numerous bandages all over his body from the damage he received from the special grade curse, but they were too superficial for him not to need rest. Megumi, of the three, was certainly the most injured, because before facing Hanami and suffering the exhaustion of having his cursed energy drained, he had already faced Kamo. Actually, I don't really know what happened. I think he thinks he met me in high school, or something. Itadori bit into a slice of pizza and answered Nobara. How does that work? Nobara blinked, clearly confused by what she had heard. I have no idea. Itadori just shrugged. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't explain this ability to implant memories. Megumi watched the interaction in silence, focused only on eating a slice of pizza she had in her hands. Itadori noticed the silence, his eyebrow rising in curiosity. How are you feeling, Fushiguro? Megumi took the question in silence, leaving her slice in the box while he looked thoughtful. When it all happened, Megumi couldn't do much about the curse. In fact, he believed it had been more of a burden than anything else. But after remembering Itadori's words, he understood that simply belittling himself for it wouldn't get him anywhere. He needed to get stronger, or he would remain just that, a burden. Itadori was already several steps above him, and he had been a sorcerer for less than 3 months. He would change that. Itadori. Yuji blinked when he heard his name, his eyes moving to look directly at Megumi. I won't continue to be a burden. I'll get stronger and overcome you. Itadori cracked a smile, his eyes emitting a sparkle that both his companions seemed to notice. This time I heard trust, so this is a promise between the three of us. We're all going to get stronger. As expected from my brother. Always encouraging his teammates. The three froze when a new voice suddenly sounded, and they turned to see Todo watching them with a smile. Man, that was weird. Itadori simply said, a sigh escaping his lips as he took a slice of pizza and handed it to the sorcerer. And to think Hanami could really be eliminated. What a disgrace, darn jujitsu sorcerers. Sitting under a beach umbrella, Jogo grumbled while resting his chin on his fist. His face showed irritation, but deep in his eyes, a sense of discouragement was visible. It was normal for him to feel this way. He and Hanami shared the same dream, and despite not getting along so well, they felt they should protect each other. Finding out she had been exorcised hit him in a way he had never felt before. Whoa! In the water, Dagon murmured, causing Jogo to look at him with an irritated face. Don't worry, we'll find her in the future. I'm sure of it. And seeming to understand the curse's noises, he declared. This outcome was unexpected, but still, we managed to collect the fingers protected by the school. Mahito sat on a beach chair, speaking with a hint of sorrow in his words. It's really sad that Hanami was exorcised. She was so cute. Thanks to her, our plan was accomplished. Beside them, Kenjaku spoke with a small smile. Don't be discouraged, for she sacrificed herself for her own ideals. Indeed. Jogo nodded in agreement. Now we can start planning our plan. Sealing Satoru Gojo. Walking through the streets of Tokyo, the freshman group from Jujutsu High seemed to attract attention wherever they went. Whether it was their uniforms or their unusual appearances, none of them seemed to enjoy receiving constant stares. Well, it's normal for a beautiful girl like me to attract so much attention, Nobara commented confidently. It's our uniforms, it's not normal clothing. But Megumi simply stated, causing the girl to furrow her brow. We should grab something to eat. Itadori, who seemed to be looking around with interest, suggested. You can only think about food? Nobara questioned with irritation, causing Itadori to turn to her with an impassive face. Try spending months eating dehydrated food. He didn't say those words, but that's what he wanted. Even though he had memories of Itadori eating normal food, the predominant memories were still from his old life, where he spent almost a whole year eating only dehydrated and prepared food in a way that removed most of its flavor. It was normal for him to want to enjoy the pleasures that good food could provide. Sort of. Nobara sighed. I agree with Itadori, I'm hungry too. Megumi declared, stopping in front of a Korean restaurant. Itadori noticed his companion's intention, a small smile on his lips as he walked towards the entrance. That sounds good, I want to try spicy chicken with sauce. I'll go for something lighter. Megumi declared and followed him. Ugh. Nobara crossed her arms, giving up arguing with the two as she followed them. Wait up. After a few minutes, the three left the restaurants with very satisfied looks. Except for one person. You monster. Itadori declared, turning to Nobara, who rubbed her belly with a happy face. You ate more than me and Megumi combined. How is that possible? Hey. Nobara pointed at him discontentedly. Who told them to allow unlimited self-service? Clearly it wasn't me. That's no reason to cause them a loss. With the argument between the two heating up, Megumi stepped away embarrassed when the attention of the people around turned to them. Idiots. The growth of Itadori Yuji has become a point of discussion among the higher echelons. They're feeling threatened. In the director's office, Yaga stared at Gojo, who was sitting in front of him. Ah. Of course. He's one of my talented students. Gojo boasted about Itadori's performance, but a serious look from Yaga made him go silent. This is no joke, Satoru. The director reprimanded the former student. If we measure his level based only on cursed energy control, we can place him side by side with Aoi Todo. But if we take into account the recent events, he can be classified as a special grade sorcerer. If it comes to that, the higher echelons will surely designate someone to assassinate him, since his growth is abnormal, and they can say it's because Sukuna is influencing him. Gojo smiled at that statement. He understood that very well, but he couldn't be less worried. Itadori had become very strong in a short amount of time, surpassing his expectations by far. With a consecutive hit of black flashes, and now, the ability to expand his own domain, it was only a matter of time until there was no one capable enough to hunt him down. Besides, with me here, who are they going to send? Yaga sighed in resignation. But despite being too proud, Gojo was right. At that moment, there was no one who could hunt down Yuji Itadori. Sneeze. Away from the school, Itadori suddenly sneezed, his eyes wandering around as he seemed to be looking for something. What's wrong? Noticing his strangeness, Nobara turned to see him. I think someone has been talking about me. 4 victims, stabbed to death at the entrance of their apartments, automatic locks opened. Different dates, different locations. Why? Why the hell can't I remember this? As the group walked through Megumi's old school with assistant manager Nita, Itadori seemed a bit disconnected from the group as they interrogated some delinquents and Megumi's former teacher. No. It's not that I don't remember. I just didn't pay enough attention to this part. Rubbing his chin, Itadori tried to recall the events that followed, but his lack of attention to the story made him miss most of the details. Damn, my habit of skipping a few minutes of episodes is finally backfiring on me. Fushiguro. As the group headed towards the car to leave, the former teacher suddenly called out to him. Is Tsumiki okay? Tsumiki? Oh, that must be Megumi's sister. Yeah, she's fine. Hey, who's that? Curious about the unknown name, Nobara questioned her friend. My older sister. What? You need to talk more about yourself. With the group finally leaving, it didn't take long for them to reach the cursed bridge. Itadori was lost in his own thoughts, so he ended up missing that part. With the three of them heading to the bridge, they stood there for a few minutes, hoping to catch any signs of abnormalities. Obviously, they didn't see anything. What if we raised a curtain? Maybe that would force the curse to show itself. Itadori suggested an idea that might work, but Megumi quickly explained why it wouldn't. It's not the ideal location for that, we're too close to the city, people would notice. Besides, none of us knows how to raise a curtain. Itadori nodded in disappointment, and as he approached the edge of the bridge, he looked down with curiosity. I think we should head back for now, there's no sign of anything here. Nobara suggested with a bored look. The girl was getting tired of just waiting. Maybe if we interrogate a few more people, we might find something. You guys can go, I'll stay here. Itadori declared as he sat on the edge. It's better if someone stays here in case something happens. If this place is the birthplace of the curse, it will eventually show itself. If that's the case, it wouldn't be safe to leave you here alone. Megumi approached, clearly disagreeing with that idea. If this is its birthplace, it's possible that it's very powerful, considering the range of its reach. Or maybe not, after all, to have such a large range, it would have to sacrifice something. The ability to defend itself, perhaps? Itadori glanced at the lake below the bridge, his eyes narrowing as he noticed an anomaly in the air, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. But, hey! You might be right, when did you become so knowledgeable about Jujutsu? Nobara questioned with some interest. I had 2 months to study. Itadori remembered the training period with Gojo. Combat and refining cursed energy control were part of the training, but the teacher made sure to teach him about Jujutsu and its concepts. Gojo could be playful and silly most of the time, but he was really great at teaching theoretical concepts, despite saying he found it boring. Damn, I feel like I'm falling behind. Nobara grumbled, receiving a nod of agreement from Megumi beside her. It's not just you. With a sigh, Megumi simply turned away. Alright, I trust you, Itadori. Just send us a message if something strange happens, we'll come back as soon as possible. Finally, this place gives me the creeps. Nobara celebrated as she passed by the boy. We'll bring you something to drink. With a farewell wave, Itadori opened a small smile as he watched the two walk away from the bridge. And seeing them disappear into the distance, he turned his attention back to the area below the bridge, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Truth be told, the main reason he hadn't decided to go with the two was simply the unwillingness to walk all the way back to the car. But after noticing something strange below the bridge, he decided to investigate on his own. He knew that if the two were alive in the future, then nothing in this place should be powerful enough to put them at risk. But thanks to his intervention, and the possible death of Hanami, he didn't want to take any chances. Kenjaku could change his plans and add more firepower to his missions. His next encounter with Mahito was supposed to happen only in Shibuya, but if there was a chance of encountering him in this place, Megumi and Nobara couldn't be with him at all. Mahito wasn't as strong when it came to cursed energy, or even combat intelligence, but his curse technique guaranteed a hit kill for most of his opponents. Itadori was the only one who couldn't be affected by him, thanks to Sukuna. Sukuna. The king of curses was still a mystery, but considering the events at the school, Itadori believed he should already have some interest in Megumi and his shadow technique. But up to this point, Sukuna hadn't made any moves regarding this. No pacts, or even an attempt to persuade Itadori. An outsider would think that Sukuna had given up on returning, since he hadn't made any moves in that game. But Sukuna was cunning, Itadori knew that. He must be planning something, something that the boy was unable to guess at the moment. He should be careful. Hey, Sukuna. Calling out to the rogue sorcerer, Itadori waited for a few seconds. But receiving no signs of response, he just sighed in irritation. Fine, don't respond. With the boy moving to the edge of the bridge, he turned down with interest, his eyes narrowing when once again, the same anomaly formed in the air, disappearing in an instant. But I have a strange feeling about this place. With him saying with a bit of interest, a small smile appeared on his lips. There's a finger here, isn't there? Heh. With an eye emerging from the tattoo on his cheek, a mouth opened with a toothy grin. So you noticed, kid. Looks like you're not so useless after all. Itadori crossed his arms with a disdainful attitude, clearly unfazed by Sukuna's attempt to belittle him. Admit it, you're feeling threatened by me. Tisk. Rubbing his chin in curiosity, he remembered something Gojo had told him 2 months ago. So that's what he meant when he said the fingers would resonate. Well, in the end, it's not so relevant, after all, apparently I need to be close to the location where the finger is stored. Oh well. Let's get this over with. Watch, King of Curses. You're a joke dash. Slap. But as the King of Curses was about to respond, a slap silenced him, his eye and mouth closing to return to the tattoos on the young sorcerer's face. Shoo. With a disdainful smile, Itadori jumped from the bridge, landing on the ground with a thud that shook the ground beneath his feet. It didn't take long for him to notice the anomaly in his field of vision, the feeling of something trying to draw him and putting him on alert. So it was here all along. Taking a step towards the lake, the boy's eyes widened the instant his shoe was swallowed by the water, the sight before him changing in an instant. He was now in front of a cave, with what seemed to be part of the curse scattered all over the place. And it didn't take long for him to notice what should be the body of the curse emerging from a strange hole in the wall. Gotcha. Itadori watched that curse cautiously, his eyes narrowing as the creature vanished, only to reappear from another hole in the wall. It didn't take long for him to grasp how it worked, a small smile forming on his lips. So it's basically a game of whack-a-mole, huh? Drawing the blade from the sheath at his waist, Itadori pressed his feet into the ground until it cracked, the curse watching with interest. This will be quick. Boom. In an explosion of speed, he reached the curse in an instant, his fist flying towards the creature's head, only for it to retreat into the hole at the last second. And emerging from a distant hole, the curse grinned disdainfully, clearly mocking the boy. But it was caught off guard when a blade flew towards it, its head being split in half before it could react to escape. As I expected. With a satisfied look, Itadori moved towards the curse's body, the formations from the cursed energy of the creature disappearing as an indication of its death. That was simpler than expected. With a sigh, he crouched in front of the curse's head, which slowly faded away with the wind. But looking at what remained of the curse, he raised an eyebrow in confusion when he couldn't find what he was looking for. Where's the finger? Eyes widening as he felt the ground tremble, Itadori lifted his head to see a figure landing in front of him. A figure he remembered all too well. Kakik. The cursed spirit from the school. Damn. Boom. Jumping back as a burst of pure cursed energy flew towards him, Itadori quickly raised his arms to block it, his body being pushed back by the sheer power. No, this isn't the same curse. Blocking a punch as the curse closed the distance between them, Itadori flew backwards until he collided with the cave wall. This one's definitely stronger. Dodging to the side as an explosion of cursed energy threatened to engulf him, he quickly advanced towards the curse, his fist smashing into its stomach, the punch carrying enough force to lift it off the ground. But since that day, I've become much stronger. Boom. Grasping the curse by the neck, he slammed it to the ground, and just as he was about to punch it, a blast of cursed energy struck his chest with enough force to push him away. But that didn't make the boy retreat, and the moment the curse got up, a fist greeted it, blood flying from its mouth. You think it's over? But as the curse seemed to want to retreat, another fist hit it in the stomach, a barrage of punches hitting it all over as it made it retreat. Black. Receiving a punch to the jaw, the curse staggered back, its smile fading when it noticed the cursed energy building up in the young sorcerer's fist. Flash. Yuji's fist traveled at frightening speed, electricity crackling as the punch hit the curse squarely in the chest, black lightning spreading throughout the cave. Boom. The curse flew backwards until it collided with the wall, its legs giving way as it began to spit blood. Its chest was destroyed, but it was still alive. Slowly, it began to heal, but at this point, it would be futile. Still alive? Impressive. Itadori commented as he began to approach, the boy tapping his chest to clear the smoke from the previous explosion. I thought a single black flash would be enough, but it seems I was mistaken. Very well, it doesn't matter. Stopping in front of the curse, Itadori watched fear arise in its features, his face impassive even in the face of the creature's terror. I just need to land one more. About to punch the curse, Itadori froze when a new presence reached his senses, his eyes widening as he turned to see a black portal suddenly appear. Oh, someone's already here? As a new creature emerged from the portal, Itadori frowned, his lips pursing as he closely watched the new curse. What an ugly thing. This is great. I've been dying for some fun. The creature grinned eagerly, making Itadori shudder at its grotesque appearance. Get lost, ugly thing. Allowing cursed energy to gather in his fists, Itadori got into position. But realizing a huge mistake he made, the boy immediately turned to the finger-bearer curse, only to see it gathering a huge amount of cursed energy in its hand. Damn! Covering his body in cursed energy, he took the explosion head-on, his feet being dragged backwards as he quickly regained control. You called me. But as he focused on the finger-bearer curse, he didn't notice when the new opponent moved, his head turning to see it about to spit something. Vomit. Ugly thing. Propelling himself backwards to avoid the vomit, he felt sweat trickle down his forehead as he realized he almost got covered in the strange blood. But before he could even think about his next move, a fist struck his face, accompanied by a burst of cursed energy that engulfed his head. Boom! The dust spread, the two curses watching the curtain of dust. Kachizu, who had just arrived at the scene, looked at it cautiously. When he arrived, he immediately noticed the finger-bearer curse subdued. Compared to his older brothers, he wasn't as smart, but he could tell that the boy on the scene must be strong, probably one of the jujutsu sorcerers they had mentioned. And he realized he was right when he saw the boy take a blast of cursed energy without being harmed. He felt he wouldn't win alone, and from what the curse was doing, it knew that too. The best thing at this point was to join forces. You damn pests. But surprising both of them, when the dust finally cleared, Itadori seemed fine, except for some cuts on his face from the point-blank explosion. Hitting me right in the head. What if I end up being an idiot? The two curses watched with confusion, but they immediately went on alert when the boy surged forward in a burst of speed. Boom! And before they could react, Kachizu received a solid punch to the stomach, his body flying backwards until it collided with a wall. That hurts. That hurts. The curse watched with shock in its eyes, quickly raising its arms to defend against a kick that pushed it back. Kakik. The curse smiled nervously, but a precise punch to its ribs quickly wiped the smile off its face. Black. With the curse bending over from the attack, Itadori retracted his fist, his eyes widening as absolute concentration took hold of his senses. Flaw dash. But about to unleash a devastating attack, Itadori stopped when a black portal appeared behind him, two hands grabbing him by the arms and preventing him from continuing. What? Now, Kachizu. Listening to the order from the portal, Itadori's eyes widened as he turned his gaze forward to see Kachizu in front of him, his cheeks bulging in anticipation. Yes, big brother. Vomit. Blood engulfed Itadori completely, the boy gritting his teeth and breaking free from the grip on his arms, pushing himself away as he wiped the blood from his face. Kakik. Boom. But as he was momentarily blinded, he was unable to react when the curse struck him in the stomach, a burst of cursed energy accompanying the attack and sending him flying. Ugh! The boy spat blood from the accurate attack, and planting his feet on the ground, he held the hit area while finally clearing the blood from his eyes. So this is how Hanami felt. Damn, this is what they call karma, isn't it? With a new strange figure that more resembled a human emerging at the scene, Itadori watched the three opponents with irritation. I should have sent a message to those idiots. I'm sorry about that. Itadori frowned as the new figure apologized. The man dressed strangely, and though Itadori wasn't one to judge others by appearance, he couldn't help but notice how peculiarly he was dressed. Our goal doesn't involve eliminating Jujutsu sorcerers, we just want to retrieve Sukuna's fingers, but I fear that might be your goal too. Itadori spat out a bit of blood collecting in his mouth, a small smile forming on his lips as he turned to the man. Well, I can't say that's a lie. Darn, this blood burns, Itadori growled as the blood covering his body began to sting his skin, his eyes narrowing. Poison, perhaps? Well, it won't have any effect anyway. As Sukuna's vessel, Itadori was immune to any kind of toxin. Whether the blood was poisonous or not mattered little. If there's only pain, Itadori can keep fighting until the end. He's strong, big bro, Akizu commented, earning a nod of acknowledgement from Eso. I apologize for the lack of honor, but you're dangerous. Eso stepped forward, the curse by his side grinning toothily as cursed energy flowed from his hands. Let's join forces to defeat him. Itadori smiled proudly, his fist clenching as he anticipated, assuming a defensive stance. Hey, you're just feeding my ego with that. But as the three enemies seemed about to begin the battle, Itadori discreetly grabbed his phone, and without even looking, he used his muscle memory to send a message to his group with Megumi and Nobara. But while he was still typing, he had to leap backward as Akizu lunged at him, trying to spit blood on him again. We won't let you call for help. But as he believed he had evaded the attack, he gritted his teeth when he blocked a kick from Eso, who closed the distance quickly. Itadori, taking advantage of the short distance, immediately moved forward to attack, but a burst of cursed energy pushed him back. They're attacking in an orderly manner. Jumping when a wave of blood threatened to engulf him, Itadori landed with both feet on Akizu's head, crushing him to the ground. Big bro. And seeing him call for his brother, Itadori lifted his head to see Eso already in front of him, about to kick him. But still, they're not in sync. Grabbing the man by the neck, Itadori hit him with a precise punch to his chest, Eso spitting blood as he was pushed away. And seizing this moment, Itadori raised his foot to stomp on Akizu. Boom! But before he could complete the move, an explosion of cursed energy flew towards him, forcing him to raise his arms to block it. Kakik! A curtain of dust rose, but as the curse laughed, its smile vanished when it noticed a movement beside it, its vision taken by a blue glow advancing towards it like a bullet. Ko! The curse's stomach was crushed by a fist, Itadori flashing an excited smile as he sent the enemy flying through the cave. Next. With cursed energy flowing from his fists, the boy turned with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Eso watched the boy cautiously, his eyes narrowing when he realized the sorcerer was even more dangerous than he believed. His fighting instinct is high, I can't hold back, or my brother and I might end up dead. You're truly impressive, kid, Eso praised, his face taking on an irritated expression as his body contorted. I fear we won't be holding back. Itadori widened his eyes as wings of blood suddenly sprouted from the man's back, his fists rising as he took a few steps back. Death brought by the wasp. King of Wings. Itadori felt the danger emanating from the enemy, his instinct screaming for him to move away, which he quickly obeyed, running toward some pillars in the cave. And as the blood suddenly pierced through the pillar, narrowly missing his face, he realized his instincts were correct. Piercing blood? Damn, now I remember. Acrobatically dodging numerous jets of blood threatening to pierce him, Itadori continued to move through the cave. These are Choso's brothers. Throwing his head back when a jet of blood grazed his face, he quickly moved behind a pillar. "We're in an enclosed environment. You can't escape forever." "I know that, Captain Obvious." Itadori growled, ducking as a jet passed over his body. "That's why I'm not just running away." Eso, who was about to send more jets of blood, was surprised when the pillar the boy was hiding behind flew towards him, quickly using the blood to destroy it. "I'm getting closer." Eso widened his eyes when he realized the boy was already in front of him, and gritting his teeth, he raised his defense to block a punch. Boom! But the force behind the attack was too much to defend against, his body colliding with a cave wall and causing some chunks of earth to fall onto his body. "I'll help you, big bro." Ekizu, seeing his brother being attacked, appeared on Itadori's back intending to bite him. Ugh! But a kick to his stomach stopped him, his body flying backward as he vomited blood all over the ground. "Damn, this blood hurts too much." Itadori shook his foot, his head turning to find Eso already getting up. "Well, you held your ground in the end. You hurt my brother, kid." Eso wiped the blood from his lips and opened a disdainful smile. "You think you'll get away with it?" Yes, Itadori was not intimidated by the man's posture. At this point, he had the advantage. You feel like you're in control, don't you?" Eso's smile widened, but this was not simply due to his pure confidence in victory. "Well, think again." Itadori, surprised by the man's confidence, turned when he noticed movement in his peripheral vision, his defense instinctively rising in time to block a fist charged with cursed energy. Kakik. Still standing, Receiving a punch to the chin, the curse staggered to the side, Itadori advancing towards it with cursed energy dancing around his fist. Not so fast. But before he could reach it, his eyes widened as numerous jets of blood appeared in front of him, one of them hitting the side of his face while the others struck his body. Itadori groaned as he felt some of the attacks lightly pierce his flesh, but that was far from the biggest problem. Because before him, the curse wore a huge toothy smile, cursed energy accumulating chaotically in its hands. He realized he would be unable to dodge this attack. Boom! An explosion of cursed energy engulfed the boy's body, smashing him against the cave wall and making it tremble like an earthquake. Smoke emanated from his body, parts of his clothes burnt, while he had some new wounds on his body. "You think it's over, kid?" But as he breathed tiredly, his ears caught Eso's voice, his attention returning to the man who watched him with a victorious smile. Supreme Rot Technique, Decadence. Itadori was surprised as he felt his body paralyzed, marks with a floral pattern appearing all over his body, indicating the activation of the technique. But as the paralysis vanished faster than it appeared, Itadori smiled disdainfully, Eso seeing this and furrowing his brow in irritation. "What are you laughing at, kid?" Ignoring him, Itadori lowered his head as he looked at his hands, some burn marks on his skin. "Damn, I acted without thinking, and almost died because of it." Itadori took a deep breath, his smile widening as he raised his head to face Eso and the cursed energy bursting from his body in a way that made both enemies take a step back. "But screw it, I just have to get stronger next time." Clasping his hands together in a simple, thoughtless gesture, he let his cursed energy spread throughout the cave. "This fight is too disadvantageous for me. Let's even the odds." Eso felt sweat dripping down his forehead, a sense of urgency overtaking him and causing him to send numerous jets of blood toward the boy. Domain expansion. As the barrier expanded, the jets of blood dissipated in their trajectory, Eso freezing as the cold front hit his skin, a heavy snowstorm appearing in front of his eyes, while his feet were engulfed by the snow. Hunting territory. Howl. When Megumi discovered that his sister had gone to the bridge, he couldn't help but freeze. The mere possibility of his sister ending up becoming a target of the curse left him with a sense of urgency, but considering the pattern of the attacks, he knew he still had enough time to deal with it. And as he and Nobara were about to inform the school about the events, a strange message halted them. A message in the group composed of the two of them and Itadori, created with the purpose of communicating during missions or even casually. Normally, they wouldn't care much. Itadori tended to send funny pictures from time to time, for no particular reason. But the content of the message left them quite worried, especially considering that the boy should still be at the bridge. Pink idiot, ELPNE. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Did he mean, help me? Nobara observed the message with a pensive look. Megumi, beside her, just pondered on it for a moment. Perhaps the girl was right, or it was just another of the boy's oddities. But considering all the circumstances, it was best that they went to him as quickly as possible. If Itadori had indeed asked for help, the enemy must be strong. Let's go to the bridge. Eso scanned his surroundings urgently. He had hesitated, fallen into a trap that would be difficult to escape. But how could he expect someone so young to be capable of expanding their domain? Having an innate domain was rare enough, being able to expand it put him on a level above common sorcerers. Eso could never have foreseen this. Perhaps he was guilty for not finishing off the boy when he had the chance, but at this point, there was no use lamenting further. He needed to keep himself and his brother alive. Big brother. Eso's eyes widened when his brother's voice came from afar, sounding as if he were just a few meters away. Little brother. Eso shouted, using his hand to shield his eyes from the snowstorm as he began to walk toward the voice. Help me, big brother. Again, his brother's voice, this time more desperate, as if he were in danger. Eso noticed it, and picking up the pace of his steps, he began to run, hoping to reach him. I'm coming, little brother. Just hold on a little longer. Receiving no response, Eso accelerated, kicking the snow under his feet that sought to hinder his movement. Brother? Answer me, brother. He tried to get a response, but he realized that even if he received one, the sound of the increasingly intensifying storm would prevent him from hearing it. Damn it, damn it, damn it. He cursed, his head turning from side to side as he tried to decide which direction to follow next. With the growing strength of the storm, spotting any trace in the distance became increasingly difficult. Eso, who wanted to find his brother above all, felt fear growing in his heart. A fear that, unbeknownst to him, awakened something in that domain. Something that even the owner of this domain did not know. Eso froze when he felt a gaze upon him, as if someone were watching him maliciously. This put him on alert, his blood wings spreading as he looked around for his pursuer. But there was nothing, even if he strained his vision, he was unable to find anything. But that did not dispel that feeling, someone was still watching him, from somewhere, even in this heavy snowstorm. And realizing this, he froze, his gaze slowly moving upward, hoping not to find anything, as it had been with his surroundings. But to his surprise, breaking his expectations, his gaze landed on something strange. Something terrifying, even for him, who had seen quite strange things. What is this? An eye hovered in the sky, watching him in a terrifying manner, never diverting its attention from him. The meaning of this? Eso did not know, and he couldn't even guess. Perhaps it was simply a way to scare him? Or maybe it would unleash an attack that would annihilate him in a second? Eso could only theorize, but if the eye hadn't done anything yet, he shouldn't worry about it for now. Finding his brother was his main goal. Hey! But as he was about to return to search for his brother, his body stopped when a voice sounded from behind him. I found you. Eso immediately turned, the blood of his wings preparing to attack, only for a powerful punch to hit his stomach, his body contorting as he fell to his knees. A single blow made him fall, that's what he thought. He had fallen before a single attack. You damn! Eso cried out, blood dripping from his chin as he clutched his stomach urgently. And raising his head to face his attacker, he could see that boy, staring at him with authority, as if Eso were nothing but a nuisance. What did you do to my brother? He demanded to know, and Itadori, watching him in that state, just remained silent. Eso growled at this, and understood that the chance of his brother being dead at that moment was very high. If that were indeed true, he would refuse to die without taking the boy in front of him with him. Idiot, even if I die, I won't deactivate the effect of my poison. Your body will decompose until there's nothing left. But what Eso didn't know was that his poison had no effect on Itadori, who was immune to any toxin. In his eyes, the fact that the boy was still moving was simply due to a very high tolerance. But what he believed was that even though he was tolerant, decomposition still existed in his body. Unfortunately for him, Itadori knew better. Your poison doesn't work on me. And declaring that, Itadori let the cursed energy dance in his fist, Eso's eyes widening. And don't worry, I'll make sure you're reunited with your brother. You bastard. Eso's wings expanded, ready to attack. Boom. But before he could even send a single jet of blood, the boy's fist descended upon his head, smashing it to the ground and sinking it into the snow. An attack that declared the end for the man who only wanted to save his brother. Itadori watched the lifeless body of the man for a few seconds, before his attention turned to the side, when a huge figure slowly approached in the snowstorm. The giant wolf that resided in his domain revealed itself, its lips and chin fur stained with blood, indicating the fate of his other two opponents. Well done, big guy. Itadori stroked the wolf's snout, which, pleased with the caress, closed its eyes in appreciation of the affection. Well done. Itadori pondered about this whole situation but didn't dwell too much on what he was feeling. These two should be his brothers, even though they are very distant, they are still brothers, somehow. But Itadori didn't feel much about their deaths. Even if they had some relation, they weren't part of his life. He wouldn't cry for their deaths. But there was something that had intrigued him. In the face of danger, a jujutsu sorcerer tends to evolve. Itadori could sense that, because moments before he used his domain expansion, some new information had emerged in his mind. Some very important information. Looking at his hand, Itadori focused on the blood dripping from some wounds on his arm, his eyebrow raising in surprise when he noticed the blood moving slightly before he lost control. My wolf is capable of devouring the soul, he declared, confirming the information he had received. Because of that, I'm able to extract the target's innate technique after devouring them. So now, I should be able to use blood manipulation. Itadori rubbed his chin, pondering over that new information. Well, that also makes me able to use Hanami's abilities, doesn't it? The wolf may not have devoured her completely, but it swallowed one of her arms. That would explain why she was unable to regenerate it, since it was a direct attack on the soul. Only Mahito should be able to recover from damage like that. Itadori sighed. These were new things to think about, and he felt he should ponder them later. His wounds were starting to hurt too much, and he just wanted to go back to the dorms and rest. Petting the wolf one last time, he smiled. Thanks for the help, big guy. Receiving a howl in response, Itadori dispelled his domain, blinking when he didn't feel the same exhaustion he was used to. My cursed energy reserves are full? He felt the cursed energy coursing through his body. So this is the result of a successful hunt. Itadori. The boy turned when he heard his name, seeing Megumi and Nobara running toward him, which made him realize that he was no longer in the cave, but back at the small stream under the bridge. Damn, you look awful. Nobara remarked when she saw the injuries scattered across the boy's body, along with his torn clothes. Did you exorcise the curse? Megumi questioned as he approached, Itadori nodding as he held his injured shoulder. Yeah, I had some trouble because it seemed to have reinforcements, but I was able to deal with them. Megumi nodded in understanding, his eyes moving to a body a few meters ahead. Was that the reinforcement you mentioned? Nobara asked as she walked toward Eso's lifeless body, noticing his partially crushed head. Damn, you didn't give him a chance, did you? And he also seems to be flesh. Nobara froze, her head turning to Itadori, who sat on the ground and took a deep breath. Yeah, I noticed. He said undisturbedly, his hand moving to the pocket of his pants as he grabbed an object, pulling it out to reveal one of Sukuna's fingers. I retrieved one of Sukuna's fingers, he was after it too. The two colleagues approached, Itadori putting it away again. And are you okay with that? Nobara seemed worried, after all, killing a curse and killing a human were different things. She knew that doing so could negatively affect her friend. But Itadori really didn't want to talk about it for now. He would have time to think about his own feelings later. Let's go. Nobara and Megumi watched him silently, both sighing as they nodded in agreement. Okay. With some bandages scattered across his body, Itadori was sitting outside his dormitory, his gaze wandering through the dark and silent night of Jujutsu High School. After returning from the mission, he was sent straight to the infirmary. Although he hadn't suffered any fatal injuries, he still had some serious wounds, which earned him some rest time. And he really decided to take this time to relax and gather his thoughts. It had been a while since he'd done so. Watching the fireflies light up in the distance, he opened a small satisfied smile. Even though he believed the view of space was incomparable, he had to admit. This place was also very beautiful. With its calm landscape, traditional architecture, and nature, it gave him a tranquil feeling. He liked this place. He had always been someone who appreciated what the world could offer, so this wasn't unfamiliar to him. With his eyes wandering around, he stood up, his hands hiding in the pockets of his coat as he began to walk away from the dormitories. 1 a.m., that should be the current time. Feeling the cold night wind hit his skin, he shivered slightly, a small smile on his lips as he wandered aimlessly. At this hour, he didn't expect to find anyone awake, so he wasn't concerned as he continued to walk. But as he seemed distracted by the environment, he stopped in his tracks when a sound caught his attention. A strange sound of wind, which repeated consistently. This made his eyebrow raise in curiosity, his body moving almost instinctively towards the sound. Is someone awake? He wondered as he got closer to the source of the sound, his expression filling with surprise when the sounds of effort reached him. Yes, it seemed so. Passing by a facility, Itadori stopped when he observed the source of the sound, his eyes moving to the swing of a wooden sword, which caused the wind sound that had caught his attention. The sounds of breathing were consistent, her gasps standing out in the silence of the night. Itadori wasn't surprised to find such a figure in this place, but it was really a bit disconcerting to see her training so early. From what he knew, she should be someone extremely hardworking. Seeing this only confirmed what he already knew. Maki Zenin, the one who would become one of the strongest jujitsu sorcerers in the future. Maki, who had been focused on swinging the sword in her hands, stopped when she noticed someone's arrival, her head turning to see a pink-haired boy standing a few meters from where she was. She immediately recognized him, but didn't seem surprised. Yuji Itadori, the vessel of Sukuna, the king of curses. Maki hadn't thought much about the boy. The higher-ups wanted him dead, but she couldn't care less about the opinion of some idiotic old men. In her eyes, Itadori was decent and someone important for the future of the jujitsu sorcerers. Besides, considering that he had become a sorcerer less than 3 months ago and was already capable of facing someone like Todo, he must have tremendous potential. Tisk. Clicking her tongue, the girl placed her hand on her waist, her eyes narrowing. What is it? She asked with a bit of coldness, Yuji rubbing his neck as he opened a small smile. I was just taking a walk and ended up finding you. He was honest, after all, there was nothing wrong with his actions. You seem to work hard. Maki blinked, not paying much attention to the boy's compliment and just returning to swinging her wooden sword. Well, someone has to work hard, right? She simply replied. Train while they sleep. You seem to follow that to the letter. Approaching, he said with a bit of admiration in his tone. He didn't want to insult the girl, so he made sure to act respectfully. But when the girl turned to him with a cold expression, he stopped. If you're here just to chat, I'm not the right person for that. She declared, making Itadori stare at her in silence. He had to admit, the girl was quite direct. Itadori didn't respond immediately, seeming to process her words for a moment. I understand. Seeming to back away, Maki sighed, returning to her training. You seem to communicate in a different way. But surprising her, the sound of wood echoed behind her, making her turn to see Itadori pulling a sword from a rack. I can respect that," Itadori declared with a smile, swinging the wooden sword in his hands to measure its weight. "And what kind of idiot would I be not to take advantage since you're here?" Maki followed him with her eyes, watching him stop in front of her while he looked at the sword with curiosity. "To be honest, I've never used a sword before." Resting the tip of the sword on the ground, Itadori explained. "So this will be a great learning experience." Raising the wooden sword, he pointed it towards Maki, which made her blink at the act. "Senpai, please teach me." Silence hung in the air after those words left his mouth. This made him question if he had acted too strangely. But Maki, who hadn't responded until then, just displayed a confident smile, seeming to like his attitude. "Alright, but my training is not light at all." Itadori smiled at that, unfazed by her words. After pushing his body to the limit with Gojo's training, he really didn't fear any training. "I can handle it." When Panda woke up that day, he immediately noticed the sound of impacts. In fact, this was the main reason for his awakening. The constant sound of something colliding irritated him enough to get up and see what it was about. But his irritation vanished the moment he saw the scene before him, his mouth opening in disbelief, his feelings replaced by confusion. Maki charged at Yuji, the boy skillfully blocking a lateral attack with his sword, backing away quickly. But Maki was quick to pursue him, sending two rapid attacks that the boy struggled to block, counterattacking with a sweep, which she promptly avoided by jumping over his body and landing behind him. "Huh!" But seemingly expecting this, Itadori surprised her by grabbing the collar of her shirt, throwing her away and making her stagger as she stopped her momentum. Itadori took advantage of this to advance, hitting her defense with 3 swift attacks, finishing with a thrust that she narrowly avoided, kicking his stomach to push him away. They had been at it for hours, both trying to gain an advantage over the other. At first, Itadori had trouble keeping up with the girl, being hit numerous times, but he managed to compensate with his reflexes. But still, his skills with the sword were scarce, resulting in a bout where he was completely dominated by Maki's superior skills. But after a few hours, this changed as Itadori's sword skills gradually improved, using his physical prowess to close the gap between them. This resulted in a balanced fight between the two, each trying to gain the upper hand. And this continued for countless hours. Of course, it wasn't as if they were aware of it. The realization that they had been at it for hours only came when they noticed the sun starting to rise, but even then, neither seemed to want to stop. At this point, both were drenched in sweat. Maki's hands were trembling, while Itadori had some throbbing bruises. But even recognizing that both were tired, they seemed to have no intention of stopping, a smile appearing on both their lips as they looked at each other, raising their swords in preparation. At this point, Panda wasn't the only one watching, the rest of the students had already gotten up and joined him. "How long have they been at it?" Nobara asked in surprise, noticing the sweat dripping from their faces and soaking their hair. "I don't know, but my guess is it's been hours," Panda replied, making the others nod in agreement. "He's giving Maki a great fight. I thought Itadori only fought with his fists," Nobara noted, her head turning to Megumi, who was watching the scene with surprised eyes. "So did I." The swords of the two combatants collided, Itadori gaining the upper hand as Maki was pushed back, quickly raising her defense to block 3 attacks that swayed her body from side to side. But as Itadori seemed to be gaining the advantage, he was surprised when Maki dropped to the ground, his attack hitting only air. "Huh!" Maki immediately tried to knock him down with her legs, but just as he was about to fall, he placed one hand on the ground and propelled himself away. The girl got up, raising her sword, while Itadori did the same. At that moment, they didn't need to exchange words to know what they were thinking. It was time to end this. Both could tell. That's why, raising their swords, they prepared. It was time to decide the winner of this bout, which had long ceased to be just a simple training session. "They're going to finish this now," Megumi noted. Boom! The ground shattered as the two charged, and at a speed that was hard for the spectators to follow, they passed each other. But while those watching expected one of them to fall to the ground, they were surprised when both their wooden swords shattered. "Atai, huh?" Itadori turned with a smile. "Seems so." Maki responded, turning while returning his smile. "This had been a great practice. I didn't know you were so close to Maki. When did that happen?" Walking side by side through the city center, Nobara suddenly asked Itadori, who seemed a bit distracted before having his attention caught. After training with Maki, he returned to his dorm to take a shower. Feeling refreshed, he was about to put on some clothes. He would be lying if he said he wasn't startled when Nobara suddenly barged into his room. "Hey, idiot! You're coming with me to the city center." The moment the girl opened the door, she froze as soon as she saw Itadori dressed in nothing but a towel. The boy blinked at her but didn't care that his chest was exposed. He was a man, and showing his body wasn't an issue for him. With that in mind, he just turned around while looking for some clothes to wear. "I spent the night training. I want to sleep," he simply declared with little interest, grabbing a plain white shirt and sweatpants. "I need to change clothes." He waved his hand as if to shoo her away, causing the girl to blink for a few seconds before her face turned red. "Idiot! There's a huge clothing sale. I need you to help carry the bags." Nobara simply ignored the fact that he was just in a towel, her mind returning to the reason she was there. "Go ask Megumi or someone." Returning to the bathroom with the clothes, he quickly got dressed, coming back to the room soon after. "I'm really tired, so it's not happening." Nobara watched in silence as he moved slowly towards his bed, adjusting the air conditioning before lying down and covering himself completely with the blanket. All very casually, as if she wasn't even there. But while Itadori seemed to think he had won, he was surprised when he opened his eyes to see Nobara glaring at him, their faces close enough for him to notice her intimidating expression. "I've been waiting for this sale for 2 months, so I won't take no for an answer." They stared at each other for countless seconds, a deadly silence hanging in the air, before Itadori just closed his eyes. No. To be honest, he didn't know how he ended up agreeing to follow her in the end. Maybe his tired mind betrayed him, thinking that just agreeing with her was the easiest path. "I found her training late at night, so I decided to join. We didn't talk much before that," he declared with little enthusiasm, dark circles under his eyes. "Damn, let's just get this over with." Nobara rolled her eyes at that. Okay. Shrugging, the girl moved towards a clothing store, with Itadori following her. He noticed that the store seemed crowded, the checkout line long enough for him to conclude that this would take a considerable amount of time. "I should be sleeping." Rubbing his face, he moved to sit in a chair. He watched as Nobara disappeared among the other women with an excited face, like a child in a candy store. "Women," he declared, receiving a tired nod from other men who were seated beside him. As the activity in the store continued, Itadori felt his eyes getting heavier. He fought against sleep a bit, but at this point, he knew it was a losing battle. After an intense training session, it was normal for him to feel tired. The fact that he had been awake for over a day only intensified that. There was no reason for him to resist it, so he just gave in. If something happened, he was sure his instincts would wake him up immediately. Probably. Opening his eyes slowly, Itadori was surprised to notice he was no longer in the clothing store. No, he was in a different place, one he knew like the back of his hand. With the metallic shine of the walls and the sound of high technology originating from every corner, he realized immediately. He was back on the International Space Station, the one he had fought so hard to be a part of one day. And it seemed intact, as if nothing had changed since he left. Is this real? Touching the wall, he felt the cold sensation of metal, his eyes shining for a moment before his expression filled with doubt. No, it can't be. To be honest, he couldn't say. And if the same thing that had taken him to the world of Jujutsu Kaisen had decided to bring him back? It was a possibility. A possibility that excited him but also deeply scared him. If that were the case, would he be sent back? Besides, looking at his reflection, he noticed he didn't see his old face. He was still Itadori Yuji. That disheartened him a bit, but it made him understand that all of this probably wasn't real. Was he dreaming? Boom! Widening his eyes when the station suddenly shook, Itadori immediately went on alert, his eyes turning to the end of the corridor when the sounds of hurried footsteps reached his ears. What the hell is going on? Raising his hands in anticipation for battle, he froze when he saw the people responsible for all the commotion. A person suddenly appeared from the corridor, Carlos, who should have been one of the communication officers on the station. Run! We need to get. But seeing him running desperately while giving orders, Itadori froze when something pierced his body, impaling him but not killing him immediately, leaving him agonizing while struggling to breathe. Itadori Yuji. Itadori, who was about to move in an attempt to do something, stopped when a familiar voice called his name, his eyes widening as he turned to the end of the corridor, only to find numerous members of his crew meeting the same fate as Carlos. I found you. The one responsible for this? It was the one Itadori had sworn to kill, the one who had tormented him in his new life and now seemed to want to do the same in his old one. Mahito! He roared, wasting no time running towards the curse, his teeth clenched as veins bulged on his forehead. If Mahito wanted him to hate him even more, he had succeeded. No need to shout, I can hear you. With a mocking laugh, the curse threw the crew members' bodies towards the sorcerer, who dodged them while continuing his charge. Bring it on. Mahito prepared as Itadori reached him, a punch landing squarely and making his body tremble for a moment. Of course, a direct hit should have been a reason for victory. After all, Itadori could pride himself on having one of the most powerful punches among sorcerers. But something was wrong. Why had he been unable to release his cursed energy? Itadori choked when a huge spike pierced his stomach, his eyes widening in pain as he was pinned against the wall. Is that all? Mahito licked his lips, and with a proud smile, he expanded the spike, causing Itadori to growl in pain. You damn! Unable to stop the blood from spilling from his throat, Itadori vomited, his eyes moving to Mahito, glaring at him with a deadly intensity that only drew laughter from the curse. Oh, I'm so scared. Raising his hand, Mahito placed his palm in front of the boy's face. Try to stay quiet. Itadori widened his eyes when he noticed a spike forming from the curse's palm, his face filling with irritation as he saw the tip advancing towards his forehead. You son of a... Hey, hey! Opening his eyes when he felt a touch on his cheek, Itadori found himself staring at Nobara's face, who looked at him with an indifferent expression. I'm done. Blinking, the boy yawned, getting up while stretching. All right, then let's go. He declared, receiving an approving nod from the girl. About to leave the store, he paused for a moment, his mind returning to the content of the dream he had just had. But choosing to set it aside, he just shrugged while continuing. It's not going to be like that. Huh? What are you talking about? Nothing. Weirdo. When Itadori said he was going to buy some things, Nobara didn't do much to stop him. Since she was only carrying one bag, she didn't worry about keeping him around to carry them. So, she decided to just get a juice while she checked out other stores around the city. As she walked, she couldn't help but think about the boy. To be honest, she didn't know what to think about Itadori. In her eyes, he was a mature guy, mature enough that she found it strange. Sometimes, when they were talking, he seemed to speak like an experienced adult man. But at the same time that he could display such maturity, he could also be an idiot. In fact, he seemed to know the right time for jokes, which made his foolishness quite funny, especially when they were with Megumi. With all this, she still couldn't form a deep opinion about him. She could say he was a good person, and he seemed to care about everyone around him, but he also gave her a distant feeling. Nobara couldn't explain it, and it frustrated her a bit. Ugh. I never thought a boy would leave me so confused, isn't it usually girls who do that? Taking a sip of her juice, she stopped in front of a store window, her eyes landing on a black coat. She observed the piece of clothing for a moment, seeming to ponder something, before just shrugging. No, too expensive. Besides, I don't even know if he would like a coat. Just about to continue her walk, Nobara was surprised when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Excuse me. Turning around, the girl's face filled with confusion as she saw a woman bent over in front of her, as if she wanted to ask something. The one who was with you, is it by any chance Itadori? Sitting at a table in a cafe, Nobara observed the girl in front of her in silence, her chin resting on her hands, as she seemed to analyze all the information thrown at her. All this. Does it mean that it's that? Nobara asked intensely, to which the girl nodded. Yes, it's that. Grabbing her phone, she quickly sent a message to Megumi. I just called a guy who knows Itadori better than I do. Yuko Ozawa, that was the name of the girl in front of her. She was an old classmate of Itadori's and seemed to have a crush on the boy. Walking through the streets of Tokyo, she ended up seeing Nobara and Itadori coincidentally. She had gone through an incredible transformation, changing from a short, chubby girl to a tall, attractive woman. It was quite surprising to Nobara. Wait, if you happen to like him dash. No, not even if the whole world danced salsa. Thump. Nobara felt strange when those words left her mouth, blinking in confusion. Is it arrhythmia? She clutched her chest with a confused look, before shrugging. Coming out of a store, Itadori suddenly sneezed, his eyes narrowing as he looked around. I feel like I've been insulted somehow. He narrowed his eyes, a sigh escaping his lips as he began to walk. After a few minutes of waiting, Megumi finally arrived, stopping in front of the table and looking at Nobara with an irritated expression. Hey, why the hell did you call me here, dash? Hey, Fushiguro. Does Itadori by any chance have a girlfriend? Look, this girl here. So, it means that it's that? Megumi questioned with a surprised look, to which Nobara responded firmly. Yes, it's that. It didn't take long for the boy to sit next to her, immediately ordering a coffee from the nearby waiter. Honestly, I wouldn't know if he has a girlfriend, but I've seen him busy with training most of the day, so I doubt he's in a relationship. Megumi rubbed his chin as he pondered. He didn't believe Itadori had a girlfriend, since he had been too busy since he arrived at the school. He thought there was no way he could give time to a girlfriend being so busy. Besides, he doesn't seem to be someone who's that interested in it. Nobara nodded. You two are a bit alike, at least in that. Neither of you seems willing to talk to a girl. Hey. A vein popped on the boy's forehead. Ozawa listened to that with a bit of discouragement, but still, she felt she couldn't give up. Even if Itadori wasn't interested in a relationship, it didn't mean she didn't have a chance. And do you know what kind of girl he likes? Megumi didn't respond for a moment, his mind wandering to the moment when he was hospitalized, when Todo and Itadori kept him company. I heard he likes athletic women with big thighs. Ozawa felt something break in her heart, a small nervous smile appearing on her lips. I see. Nobara observed the girl with pity, but before she could say something to cheer her up, something came to mind. Wait. Athletic body, big thighs. That's basically Maki. Damn. Sorry, Ozawa. I don't think you can compete with her. You might still have a chance, you never know. Nobara tried to cheer her up, but it didn't do much for the girl, who just looked at her own hands dejectedly. With the atmosphere at the table becoming a bit depressing, the group barely noticed when one of the staff welcomed someone, Megumi being the only one to notice something when he heard someone approaching them. Damn, I've been looking for you for a long time. Nobara blinked when something was thrown in her direction, a bag landing in her lap. Did you turn off your phone? I was about to leave. Nobara turned, her vision landing on the face of a frustrated Itadori. Oh, Megumi's here too? Hey, man. He greeted the boy with a high five, a small smile on his lips. Nobara, seeing the interaction, froze for a moment when she remembered Ozawa's presence, turning to see the girl watching Itadori with a small blush on her face. Ozawa had changed a lot, so it wouldn't be strange if he couldn't recognize her, but hearing something like, "Who are you?" from a school crush wasn't something anyone would want to hear. Itadori turned to Ozawa, observing her for a moment, as if trying to recognize her. "Itadori. This is Dash." But as Nobara was about to intervene, the boy's eyes lit up with recognition. "Ozawa, is that you? How have you been?" With the group of 3 walking through the city, Nobara couldn't help but glance at Itadori, noting his impassive face. "How was it? Did you walk her to the station?" she asked. "We talked a bit, discussed what she's been doing since coming to Tokyo." Itadori opened a small smile. "We exchanged numbers too, she didn't want to lose contact like last time." Nobara nodded, understanding that although it wasn't as Ozawa planned, she seemed not to have given up. "To be honest, I noticed that she likes me," Itadori simply declared, which made Megumi and Nobara stare at him in astonishment. "But I'm not interested at the moment, and of course, I didn't tell her that." The 2 colleagues nodded. In the end, they were sorcerers, so it was normal for Itadori not to feel comfortable getting involved with someone. They had bigger problems to focus on. "Let's watch something." Without opposition, the group slowly disappeared into the crowd of people. Divine dogs. Itadori was startled when the head of a black wolf suddenly emerged from a shadow at his feet, instinctively moving just in time to escape a bite. But as he seemed to retreat, he felt trapped as something coiled around his ankles, his gaze shifting to see the tongues of several frogs holding him in place. "Damn!" Grinning nervously, he quickly raised his defenses when he noticed a shadow hovering over his body, a powerful impact striking him and sending him across the training field. New. It had been a few weeks since he had been actively training every day. Initially, he mainly trained his combat skills with Maki, but it didn't take long for Megumi and the other students to join him. Nobara was a bit lazy but had a great sense of combat and could even match someone like Panda. Thanks to daily practice, she eventually managed to unleash a black flash during a combat training session. It was quite painful, especially for Yuji, who was the one training with her at that time. Taking a full black flash was anything but pleasant. But by far, the person Itadori was most excited to train with was Megumi. He had many ideas regarding Megumi's shadow technique, mainly because his friend at the space station was a fan and loved discussing his powers. His friend also strangely had an obsessive fandom for Kirara, so he had great knowledge of the girl. Well, that didn't matter in the end. Itadori wasn't one to judge. Feeling the electricity resonating through his body, Itadori gritted his teeth as he threw a rock toward Megumi, who dodged while forming hand signs again. He didn't hold back and gave all the suggestions he had in mind. The 10 Shadows technique was an interesting innate technique and quite versatile. It certainly had tremendous potential, but there was one problem. And that was Megumi himself. As cruel as it sounded, it was, in fact, true. Megumi limited his own technique, using it in a very literal way. Itadori noticed this and decided to help Megumi with it. He knew that to change the fate of this world, he alone would not be enough. He wasn't omnipotent, and besides, a month was far from enough time for him to get strong enough. The world of Jujutsu Kaisen was far from a kind one. Even with monstrous talent and powerful determination, he alone would not be able to face Kenjaku, Mahito, and Jogo all at once. God knows he would if he could. That's why he needed his companions to get stronger, so the power gap between them wouldn't be so glaring. Opening his eyes when he felt his feet sinking, Itadori quickly turned and punched, his fist hitting the head of a black wolf directly, dissipating it into shadows. With this goal in mind, he helped Megumi train his abilities. And his tips changed the way the boy used his shadows. The 10 Shadows technique essentially involves using shadows as a means to summon Shikigami. If destroyed, Megumi became unable to use them again, but then, what was the need to summon them fully? Summoning them fully, the Shikigami were prone to being destroyed if they faced a greater force. But summoning them partially, keeping them still in their shadow forms, what would happen? Divine Dog. After punching, Itadori widened his eyes when another shadow emerged beside him, his grin growing when the wolf's head formed again, its mouth opening to bite. Itadori stopped it from biting, grabbing its jaw and keeping its mouth open. But as he seemed ready to retreat, the wolf dissolved, the shadow falling to the ground, only to reveal a shoe emerging from within it, a kick hitting the boy's face directly. The answer to the previous question was, they weren't destroyed, just returning to their shadow state. Beyond this capability, maintaining a partial summoning opened up many possibilities. Shaping, transforming, exchanging. This was the true control of shadows. Retreating quickly, Itadori watched Megumi sink into the shadows, his eyes narrowing as he prepared. And observing a shadow forming in front of him, he soon realized it would be another wolf. But as he seemed ready to attack the wolf, his eyes widened when the shadow changed before his eyes, transforming into a fully formed new. And with the distance between them closing, he realized, I won't be able to dodge. The Shikigami's wing hit him directly, electricity coursing through his body and making his muscles tremble. Indeed, with this new way of fighting, Megumi has become a danger. With shadows emerging behind Itadori, Megumi appeared, ready to strike. But there's a problem. Surprising the dark sorcerer, a fist appeared before his eyes, hitting his face directly and sending his body across the field, his back hitting the ground and forcing him to use his fingers to stop his momentum. The offensive power of your Shikigami is nothing special, you need to find a way to improve that. Itadori wiped the bloodstain from his lips, approaching a struggling to rise Megumi. But you've improved a lot, your fighting style is much more lethal. I was caught off guard several times. Offering a hand, Megumi promptly took it, getting up with some difficulty. But still, I couldn't beat you. He seemed disheartened, and Itadori could understand that. At least, that's how he felt when training with Gojo. Even so, your improvement is undeniable. Nodding, Megumi managed a smile. Even though he couldn't defeat Itadori, he was still satisfied with his results. He couldn't deny that thanks to the boy, he had broken out of his stagnation with the use of his curse technique. Hey, are you guys done? Turning when they heard a new voice, they noticed a smiling Maki walking toward them. Now it's my turn. Let's train, Itadori. The girl threw a wooden sword toward Yuji, the boy promptly catching it. Damn, you're really addicted to this, aren't you? Itadori asked, noticing that the sun was starting to set. What can I say? With a toothy grin, the girl prepared herself. Megumi, seeing the interaction between the two, just walked away toward the dorms. I'm going to take a shower. Itadori felt an impact hit his arm, but he didn't seem fazed by it as he simply counterattacked with a swing of his wooden sword. Maki, prepared for this, promptly blocked, moving back with a push of her legs. Itadori Yuji was, in Maki's eyes, certainly someone fun. They both shared the desire to gain strength, and even though neither of them knew the reason behind this desire, they respected each other. That's why she was so excited to train with him. Because by wielding their swords, they could understand. They could understand each other's desperation. With her wrist struck, Maki's sword flew away. The woman growled at this, but she didn't give up, using a precise kick to push Itadori back far enough for her to run and catch the sword in midair. But she was surprised when, upon turning around, she had to raise her sword to avoid being struck. Even though they respected each other, Maki couldn't help but feel a little envious. She, who fought against her clan, was born without talent, endowed only with a decent physique that any sorcerer could achieve by enhancing their body with cursed energy. But Itadori, in front of her, was the definition of the word talent. He had dived headfirst into the world of sorcerers and curses less than 4 months ago, and yet, he had shown monstrous talent, being able to surpass someone like Megumi. But his abilities with cursed energy weren't the only things that set him apart. His combat intelligence and abnormal physique did as well. It took him no more than a week to handle a sword adequately, which was impressive. And with his physique, he was able to match her, who had trained with swords since she was young. This made her feel a little defeated. "Hey, Maki." But while she seemed lost in her mind, she quickly abandoned her thoughts when she raised her sword to block an attack, her attention turning forward when Itadori called her. "Can I ask you something?" Naturally, as if he wasn't even in a fight, he asked, skillfully moving back to avoid a low kick. Maki growled but didn't ignore his question while staying on guard. "Ask." Attacking her defense, Itadori initiated a power struggle, quickly overpowering her and pushing her back. "Why did you decide to become a jujitsu sorcerer?" Maki was surprised by the question, but she didn't get distracted, promptly guiding one of his attacks to the ground, creating an opening to strike him with a full-force elbow. Itadori felt his nose crack, but he didn't flinch, using the close distance between them to grab her arm and throw her away. "Damn. Did that question upset you that much?" He joked, a small smile on his lips as he wiped a drop of blood from his nose. "Well, it's not my fault you let your guard down." With a mocking smile, she got ready again. "Well, to answer your question." Seeing her burst toward him, Itadori raised his sword just in time to block an attack, his instincts kicking in as he caught her foot at the last second, preventing her from kicking him in the stomach. Taking advantage of this, he attacked with his fist, his eyes widening in surprise when she let herself fall, pulling him to the ground and holding his head with her legs. "Is this turning into an MMA fight?" Feeling her thighs tighten around his neck, Itadori nervously smiled as he tried to push her legs away with his hands. "She has more physical strength than Megumi." Feeling the grip on his neck loosen, he barely reacted when a knee hit his jaw, his body rolling to the side before he got up. "I want to become a sorcerer to prove to those idiots in my clan that they were wrong." Getting up, the girl changed her expression for a moment, as if thinking about her next words. "No, I can't say that's why. I just want to become a grade 1 sorcerer as a way to disrespect that clan of old fools." Itadori nodded, understanding what she meant. He knew about Maki's situation in the Zenin clan, but he wanted to hear from her what her goals were in becoming a sorcerer. He could respect her for that. After all, she was born without talent and was completely disrespected in her clan, seen only as the future wife of some random idiot. But she didn't accept that fate and decided to carve her own path. In this, he and she were very similar. Itadori, like her, had decided to shape his own destiny. He wouldn't be a tool, not like the original Itadori was supposed to be. He would crush anyone who said otherwise, just as Maki would do to anyone who tried to stop her from proving her worth. Itadori recognized Maki's strength. "I understand." Lowering his sword, he smiled, a small smile full of admiration that she could notice. "Well, if you need help with your clan, don't forget about us. We're sorcerers, but before that, we're comrades. We don't have to solve everything alone." Turning around, he put his wooden sword in a holder. "Hey, where are you going?" The girl watched him hide his hands in his coat pockets, walking towards the dorms. "I'm going to take a shower, maybe you didn't notice, but the sun has already set." He pointed to the dark sky, making the girl blink in recognition. "We can train again tomorrow. With that said, good night." Walking away with a wave of farewell, he headed down one of the corridors, leaving Maki staring at his back with a distant look. After a few seconds, the girl just sighed, a small glint appearing in her eyes as she walked away from the training field. Idiot. Walking through the corridors, Itadori was startled when he felt his arms suddenly pulled, his eyes hit by a bright light before he recognized that he had been taken into a room. "Hey, I thought you two would never stop training." Itadori blinked upon hearing the voice, lowering his head to find a Nobara staring at him while Megumi sat in a corner of the room with a book in hand. "Huh? What's this?" He looked confused for a moment. "Movie night." But surprising him, Megumi was the one who answered, Nobara nodding with a satisfied smile. Itadori watched them in silence before just sighing as he sat down. "What are you guys?" "Two kids," says the lovesick teenager. "It's just training." "Sure." Itadori rolled his eyes at the girl's antics, his attention turning to Megumi. "By the way, what are you reading?" Megumi didn't immediately respond, his eyes moving up for a moment. "Twilight." Itadori choked, barely noticing Nobara holding back laughter behind him. "So that's where you get that demeanor of yours." "I said the same thing." Megumi felt a vein pop on his forehead. Seeing the two laughing uncontrollably, he felt a strange urge to perform an exorcism right there. "Damn, I thought it was odd that Gojo-sensei was laughing when he recommended it." 2 weeks, it took exactly 2 weeks for the incident in Shibuya to finally begin. The event that would trigger a dark future, beyond the control of the sorcerers. When the barrier was raised, trapping thousands of civilians, the Jujutsu school immediately took action. But at this point, they could only hope for the worst, while sending Gojo in alone. There wasn't much they could do after all, since the barrier prevented everyone except Gojo Satoru from entering. Because of this, they split into teams to assist the sorcerer, aiming to limit the amount of damage. But as long as the barrier stood, there wasn't much they could do. And Itadori, intending to resolve this as quickly as possible, ended up in Mei-Mei's team. Fortunately, the Grade 1 sorcerer recognized Itadori's strength enough to listen to his ideas. It would be better to split up. I can destroy the talisman that keeps this barrier up, while you look for the talismans that maintain the barrier that repels sorcerers. In front of the subway station entrance, Itadori suggested, his expression changing as he seemed to think of a plan. For a barrier to repel sorcerers, it must have some obvious counterpoint, like its talismans being positioned somewhere visible. "That's a good plan, but we can't separate our forces like this. There's a cluster of powerful curses below us, and if they get through, it will be a problem for the others." The woman explained, to which Itadori nodded in agreement. There was a lot to be done, and he couldn't prevent Gojo's sealing even if he wanted to. Even if he could reach the station, he would only get in his teacher's way. The best he could do was to minimize the strength of the curses as much as possible and recover a sealed Gojo. But for that, he needed to know if the teacher had actually been sealed, since there was a chance it hadn't happened, due to Hanami's absence. No. Without Hanami, Kenjaku will probably send some powerful curses to help, and even Choso might become more active to make up for her absence. Itadori sighed, his eyes moving to Mei-Mei and YUI, noticing that they seemed to be whispering to each other. This made him regard it with disdain. "Can we continue?" he asked, which made the woman nod in agreement. "Yes, but as I said, there are some powerful curses below. Do you think you can handle it?" Itadori scoffed at this. At this point, he didn't think any stupid curse could do more than irritate him. "We'll see. I'm smart, I'm very smart." Inside the station, a grasshopper-like curse was devouring a human it had just taken down. Its name? It didn't have a name, the only thing it knew was that it was smart, smarter than anyone. That's why these humans were now being consumed by it, because they were idiots, and idiots served as food for the smart ones. That's what it believed, and if it believed it, it was because it was true. After all, it was very smart. Huh. But as the grasshopper seemed focused on chewing, its attention turned to the station stairs, its eyes landing on a figure that had just descended. "Hey, what are you looking at?" Boom. But just as it was about to stand up, the grasshopper was unable to react as a fist pierced its skull, its head exploding into pieces while its body fell to the ground. In the end, it wasn't that smart after all. Is this the talisman? Itadori, wiping his hands, wondered as he approached an object stuck in the ground. He noticed it was covered in paper talismans, so it didn't take long to deduce what it must be. And with a simple kick, he destroyed it into pieces. Mahito must still be here, probably in the deepest underground level of the station. Moving forward, he jumped over a railing, landing on the train tracks. But it doesn't matter, I'll find him sooner or later. For now, I just need to keep up the pace. Running along the tracks, he soon noticed Mei-Mei's approach. "Oh, you were quick, I'm impressed." He accepted the compliment but didn't react much as he focused on running. "Hey, accept my sister's compliment." Itadori's face soured, deciding to ignore the strange sibling duo. But as they were moving, Itadori froze when he felt something stick to his ear, his hand quickly moving to grab and remove the object. "Wait, wait!" But a voice made him stop, raising his eyebrow in confusion. "This is Mekamaru, from Kyoto School." Recognition lit up the boy's face, realizing he had completely forgotten about this man's existence. "We don't have much time, so I'll only say this once. Gojo Satoru has been sealed." Itadori had received a new task, and that was to reveal Gojo's status to the rest of the sorcerers. In total, there were 3 barriers. Along with Mei Mei, they destroyed the third one, leaving only the barrier that repels sorcerers and the one that traps civilians. After informing about the teacher's sealing, he needed to undo the barrier that repelled the sorcerers as quickly as possible. Fortunately, his meta-knowledge allowed him to know that the talismans were in the tallest building in the district. "Itadori, good news. They can't move Gojo from the underground." Itadori smiled at this. Fortunately, things hadn't changed enough for him to feel lost about what to do. "Then let's take advantage of this." Crossing the barrier that trapped civilians, he quickly moved among the people while eliminating some transfigured humans. His eyes narrowed when he noticed there were too many curses, but he didn't let it shake him as he climbed a building. In the end, he alone wouldn't be able to save everyone. Observing the landscape for a moment, Itadori took a deep breath. "Nanami. Gojo has been sealed," he shouted at the top of his lungs. From that moment on, everything could be different. 2 days before. Mimicry. Yu and Yuta seemed to have a similar technique. In a training space hidden below Jujutsu High, Gojo and Itadori stood facing each other. Gojo appeared thoughtful, rubbing his chin with a curious expression. "But they're different. You told me your Shikigami devoured that weed's arm. Do you think you can use its innate technique?" He stared at Itadori, who seemed to ponder his words for a moment before shrugging. "To be honest, sensei, I haven't really thought much about it." Itadori rubbed the back of his neck, a bit embarrassed. Since discovering his own innate domain, he had focused entirely on improving his cursed energy control, aiming to use the least amount of energy possible when expanding his domain. Besides, he had been busy training with his classmates, so he ended up neglecting his ability to copy techniques. "I've been busy trying to figure out my own technique, so I kind of put that copying thing aside." The boy sighed. He felt a bit foolish in hindsight, but in the end, there wasn't much he could do. Sukuna's technique was simply unfeasible at the moment, and blood manipulation, while versatile, didn't seem easy to master. When it comes to that curse's technique. Itadori rubbed his chin thoughtfully, his expression doubtful for a moment before he closed his eyes and clasped his hands, remaining silent. Gojo observed the flow of cursed energy change, expanding outward from Itadori's body and spreading in all directions. "Yes, I can feel nature around me, but..." Itadori paused, and Gojo raised an eyebrow in question. "I feel my connection is very weak. I don't think I can do much more than this." "I understand." Gojo pondered this information for a few seconds. In a way, Itadori's and Yuta's techniques were very similar, but Gojo could say that, in the short term, Yuta's technique was superior. Maybe just the arm isn't enough. But if Gojo's theory was correct, Itadori's copying ability should be on a higher level, thanks to a few factors. "So, Yuji, how many techniques can you use? Including the weeds?" Itadori thought for a moment. "Mine, Sukuna's, the weeds, and that weird guy from the last mission." Gojo nodded in understanding. "And do you feel overwhelmed in any way?" Itadori blinked at this, looking at his hands as he tried to notice any strange signs. "Not at all. Just as I thought." Gojo smiled, immediately understanding how Itadori's technique should work. His short-term copying ability is inferior to Yuta's since it seems he needs to interpret the technique in his own way and master it. But in return, the technique becomes an extension of his own, basically an assimilation. This explains why he doesn't feel mentally overwhelmed so far. Gojo hid his excited smile, which Itadori noticed with some confusion. Damn, this generation is very interesting. Gojo felt excited about the future. He fully trusted his students, to the point of believing that some of them might surpass him in the future. This was no different with Yuji, especially now that he could see his technique could definitely put him at the top. Alright, I can understand your technique a bit now. Gojo declared, stepping back and raising his hand, adopting a presumptuous posture as he pointed at Itadori. So listen well, my dear student. Itadori looked at him with a disinterested expression, blinking slowly like a fish. A cursed technique, passed down through generations, can change according to the user's interpretation. That's how Jujutsu works, and it's why people today are born with modern techniques. Jujutsu itself understands that, over time, adaptability is necessary, and it does this by molding itself to the standards of an era. That's exactly why you can't use the techniques you've assimilated to their full capacity. Realization hit Itadori, his eyes shining with recognition as he seemed to notice his mistake. That makes sense. Sukuna's technique was used by him 1,000 years ago, but we're far from that time, so you need to interpret how it works in your own way. If you keep copying what he does, you'll never reach your maximum potential, and the same goes for the other techniques at your disposal. Itadori nodded vigorously, his face thoughtful for a moment before changing to complete confusion within seconds. I understand, sensei, but... Rubbing his chin, he turned to Gojo. How do I do that? I don't know. As quick as a bullet, Gojo replied with a silly smile. What? Itadori seemed incredulous for a moment. I've never used other people's techniques, so I really don't know how to do it. It's entirely up to you to figure it out. Itadori nodded at this, looking a bit disheartened. No shortcuts, then. That's the spirit. Gojo gave a thumbs up, encouraging him. But it didn't do much for Itadori, who just stared at the wall in complete silence. Damn. I can feel my time running out. Deep in the boy's soul, an unwanted man observed the scene with a gleam of interest in his eyes, a toothy, malicious smile spreading across his lips, as a cold laugh echoed through the bloody environment around him. 1 week after the Goodwill event. What do you think, bro? In a downtown clothing store, Todo picked up a jacket and held it in front of Itadori, a satisfied smile on his face. After the school event, Itadori and Todo kept running into each other around the city. Actually, Itadori believed the man was creating situations for them to meet, but he didn't mind much. He really didn't dislike Todo's presence. The sorcerer was quite decent, in fact. They had gone to a few idol events together, as Todo was a die-hard fan of Takada-chan, a famous idol. Itadori couldn't say he saw the man as extremely close, but he considered him a friend and someone he could trust. He knew Todo would help him if he asked, and it was with that in mind that he called him to walk around downtown. He wanted his help. I think it's great. Offering a thumbs up, Itadori gave a small smile. Well, it's a shame I don't have any money. I spent it all on Takada-chan last time. With a disappointed look, he put the jacket back. As they left the store, they started walking. The city was bustling, and the stars could already be seen in the night sky. Itadori couldn't help but notice this. The stars always reminded him of his past life, bringing a bit of anguish to his chest. His mind drifted to moments when he didn't have to worry about curses. Hey, bro. Blinking when Todo's voice sounded beside him, Itadori turned to see him. I can tell you didn't just call me to hang out. Itadori seemed surprised. Todo was indeed quite perceptive. Yes, you're right. Itadori stopped, nodding as he seemed to think for a moment. I need your help. Todo smiled at this. Just say the word. I'd never refuse to help my best friend. Itadori felt satisfied with his response. The implantation of memories was really something he needed to understand, as it had made someone like Todo feel such confidence in him. Itadori had thought a lot about what he was about to say. The situation in Shibuya would get out of control very quickly, and both managers and civilians would die in alarming numbers. Of course, some things would be better. After all, Sukuna would hardly take control of his body, which would prevent part of Shibuya from being wiped off the map. But still, some things needed to be done to ensure everything went in favor of the sorcerers. Todo, with Boogie Woogie, could easily handle some important matters. He was an essential piece for Itadori in this plan. I feel something bad is going to happen, and I need you to be ready to help me. Itadori said seriously, Todo frowning in confusion. What do you mean? Itadori rubbed his chin, pondering what he should reveal. Do you remember the explanation of my technique? Todo nodded. Assimilation, similar to Yuta Okatsu's. And you also remember that my wolf devoured the arm of that nature curse, right? Todo nodded, trying to understand where the boy was going. Since then, I've been receiving information from nature. It's not very detailed, as my connection with this technique is weak, but it's enough for me to say they've been devising a plan. I believe they discuss the plans in a domain where nature can't reach. But sometimes, I receive information from some curse users. It seems to be one of those who attacked the Goodwill event. I remember Nobara saying she encountered a short blonde during the event, so there's a chance it's him. Todo blinked at this information but didn't doubt the boy's words. After all, there was no reason for his best friend to lie to him. I need you to be ready to act when they move. I'll send you a message as soon as I feel it's about to happen. Itadori explained, a firm look in his eyes as he stared at Todo, who nodded determinedly. Got it, bro. Oh, and one last thing. The blonde, if you find him, bring him to me. In the middle of a forest, a curse walked slowly among the trees, its numerous eyes moving around, searching for any prey that crossed its path. It didn't have a name, but it knew it was a curse born from the fear of flies, the human fear of being infected by these creatures, and the fear of their grotesque appearance. That's what it was, a curse born from humans. And now, it had an insatiable desire to feed on its creators. And this forest was its hunting ground. At least, that's what it believed. The fly jerked its head violently when one of its eyes noticed a movement, a bush rustling as a sign of something present. And before it could even move, darkness took over its vision. Domain expansion. Freezing when the environment around it completely changed to a snow-covered forest, the curse went on full alert. Hunting ground. This voice instilled fear in its body, its wings buzzing as it seemed ready to try to escape. Get him. But startling it when a shadow appeared behind it, the fly fell as it felt its wings being torn off, its head turning to see a huge wolf finishing devouring them. As long as I recover my cursed energy, I can expand my domain as many times as I want. The curse noticed a voice saying, turning to see a pink-haired human walking towards it. But I need time for my mind to rest, or I could overload my brain. At this point, the curse felt it was in danger. It had seen that wolf move at a speed it couldn't even react to, despite its fly vision. But at the same time, knowing there was no way to escape, as a curse, it couldn't just give up. It would attack since the second option was simply accepting death. The fly lunged, its vision fixed on the human, as in its eyes, he was the most vulnerable at that moment. But like a dog playing with an insect, the wolf simply crushed it with its paw, pinning it to the ground. If I can get around this, I can keep the accumulation of strength. With a disheartened sigh, Itadori stood before the curse. But with my current capabilities, that's certainly not going to be possible. The curse opened its mouth, about to try to beg, even though it couldn't say a single word. But so fast that its eyes couldn't even keep up, its head was crushed by a kick, ending the hunt. Itadori felt his cursed energy reserves fill up, allowing him to maintain his domain for a longer time. This was something he had realized. By successfully ending a hunt, he completely recovered his cursed energy reserves, allowing him to keep his domain up for longer. But he only received this reward if he killed the marked target, which meant that by doing so, he needed to undo his domain and expand it again to mark the next target. This meant expanding his domain against someone like Jogo, who Itadori could say he had very little chance of defeating, was simply suicide. His own reserves weren't enough to maintain his domain for long, making its strengthening effect practically useless. But I don't need to mark him as my target. The realization came to him the moment he said those words, a malicious smile forming on his lips. Damn, I already know what to do. Tell me, do you think I'm worried? I trust the next generation, don't think it will be any easier just because I'm out of the game. There is someone among my students who exceeds my potential, remember that, you weirdo. Sitting amidst the station, Kenjaku, observing the prison realm, pondered over Satoru Gojo's last words before his sealing. Someone who exceeded his potential, he had said. Kenjaku could list 2 students who might fit this description. But for some reason, another figure had appeared in his mind. Could it be his son? Itadori Yuji? Kenjaku couldn't say for sure. The truth was, Itadori had been conceived with the sole purpose of serving as Sukuna's vessel. He knew the boy had superhuman physical prowess and a great talent for manipulating cursed energy. But exceeding Gojo's potential? That would be impossible. Yet at the same time, some strange things were surrounding the boy. Before Choso's brothers, the death paintings, were killed, Kenjaku felt his connection with the curses that were watching them be severed, leaving him in the dark about the means Itadori used to win. Moreover, he didn't know how Hanami was defeated either. Had his son somehow developed an ability without his knowledge? An ability that could make him someone with potential enough to rival Satoru Gojo? With a small smile forming on his lips, Kenjaku let his chin rest on his hand, his eyes glinting curiously. That would be interesting. Looking at the 41-story building in front of him, Itadori rubbed his chin thoughtfully, his gaze tracing the structure of the building for a few seconds. I can get us to the top with my new. We'd get there quickly, but we don't know what's on top. Beside him, Megumi and Ino were discussing what to do, Itadori listening to both of their suggestions. I think the best approach is to use Megumi's Shikigami. This barrier needs to be broken as quickly as possible, Itadori suggested, receiving a nod from Megumi, while Ino still seemed to be pondering the matter. Well, it's not like we have much choice. Megumi nodded, and joining his hands, he summoned his giant owl, the Shikigami flapping its wings as it grabbed Ino and Megumi by their clothes, Itadori being the only one to jump onto its back. Take us to the top. Megumi ordered, the Shikigami obeying as it flapped its wings, rising swiftly. When we get there, let's split the targets. You guys take some of them, and I'll handle the rest. Ino shouted, the 2 students nodding. Alright, get ready. It didn't take long for the winged creature to finally reach the top, revealing to the sorcerers 3 people positioned around the amulets that kept the barrier up. Now! Itadori leapt, his hands moving to grab a bundle of threads imbued with cursed energy, a gift he had received from Maki. They found us. One of the curse users shouted, but before he could even take a step, Itadori closed the distance between them, tying him up with the threads and punching his face, sending him to the edge of the building. Take care of him. I'll handle the other 2. Ino shouted as he landed on top. The 2 students nodded, Itadori lunging at the man and hitting him with a flying kick, knocking him off the building. Come on, Megumi. Itadori called and jumped. In free fall, Itadori reached the curse user, hitting him with another punch and sending him towards the ground like a bullet. Boom! The ground shattered the instant the man hit the ground, Megumi's Shikigami quickly reaching Itadori and grabbing him mid-air, helping him land smoothly. Is he alive? Megumi asked after dispersing Nu into shadows, stopping beside Itadori. Itadori observed the dust curtain silently, his cautious gaze wandering for a few seconds. Yeah. He declared, only for a figure to soon emerge, walking calmly from the dust curtain. Damn, these kids today. They don't respect their elders anymore. Itadori got into position, Megumi doing the same beside him. Damage nullification? Itadori suggested. He vaguely remembered the enemy, so he couldn't say how his technique worked. No, I don't think so. Someone with damage nullification would have shown up at some point earlier, so it can't be something that powerful. Megumi concluded, Itadori agreeing. Sacrifice and gain, that's how jujitsu works, his technique must have some fatal flaw. Itadori observed, Megumi pondering this for a moment. Face him, I have an idea. Itadori smiled at that. Got it. The curse user looked at the two with some irritation, Itadori turning and noticing it. Are you two done? Because I don't have dash. Boom. The man was surprised when, before he could finish his complaint, Itadori disappeared before his eyes, a fist hitting his jaw with enough force to push his head up. Idiot! He roared, and lowering his head, he grabbed the boy's shoulder, pulling a blade from his pants and attacking in an attempt to stab him. But again, he seemed surprised when the boy just grabbed his wrist before he could complete the attack, an elbow strike hitting his face hard enough to push him back. Damn, even if it doesn't hurt me. Raising his defense to block a punch to his face, Itadori redirected the trajectory and hit his stomach, his body flying back. The impact of the punches is strong enough to lift me off the ground. Grinning, the man tried to slash the boy's throat with a horizontal cut, but a punch to his wrist was enough to stop him, Itadori hitting his neck right after. It has no effect. Itadori noted, jumping to avoid another slash. It's nullifying my physical attacks, but if I remember correctly, he was defeated relatively easily originally. Grabbing the man's wrist to prevent a thrust, Itadori promptly kicked his foot, destabilizing his stance and making him fall forward, the boy complementing the attack with a powerful knee to the face that sent him flying back. What's the secret of your technique, old man? Seeing the man land unharmed on the ground, Itadori prepared to advance. But before he approached, he noticed a shadow emerging from the man's back, a small rabbit jumping towards him and hitting his shoulder. Itadori wouldn't have cared about this, but it was impossible not to notice when an attack that should have been insignificant made the man in front of him clench his teeth and be pushed back. I got it. Itadori smiled maliciously, giving a thumbs up to Megumi behind him. Stupid rabbit. The curse user grumbled, his attention returning to his two opponents. And about to mock how they seemed hesitant to advance, he frowned as the pink-haired boy exploded towards him. Reckless brat. Don't you see this won't work? Shouting with a disdainful tone, the man prepared his blade, his eyes following the boy who reached him in seconds. Die. Seeing the boy's fist advancing towards his stomach, the man attacked with his blade. But catching him off guard, instead of the numb sensation he was used to, an intense pain surged through his body the instant his stomach was hit, blood rising up his throat. He figured it out? He thought urgently, a vein bulging in his forehead as he was about to retreat. Boom! But before he could step back, Itadori grabbed his ponytail, hitting him with a barrage of weak punches that battered the man. Damn it! Vomiting blood, the man tried to attack, but a precise punch to his rib ended his struggle as it sent him flying away. You were great. Megumi approached, stopping beside the boy. Heh, I can say the same about you, I would have taken longer to figure out his technique. Megumi joined his hands, a frog appearing beside him and launching its tongue towards the unconscious man, pulling him to them. We should tie him up, but I doubt he can stand after this. Megumi moved to the spot where he had landed earlier, picking up the threads and returning to tie up the enemy. Itadori crossed his arms as he watched Megumi tie up the man, blinking when he noticed a strange sound. Hey, do you think Ino is done yet? Itadori asked, turning to look at the top of the building. But he was surprised when he saw a figure plummeting towards them, Itadori narrowing his eyes with confusion taking over his expression. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully, watching the figure get closer and closer. Is that Ino? Huh? Megumi turned confused, raising his head to look at where Itadori was looking. With the figure's approach, both soon noticed its features. Damn, it's Ino! They shouted in unison. Jumping, Itadori caught the man mid-air, Megumi summoning Nu and making the Shikigami hold them both before they reached the ground. With the Shikigami placing them on the ground, the two students immediately noticed the barrier trapping the sorcerers dissipate. We need to get Ino out of here. At this point, the people on top of the building must have escaped. Megumi said, Itadori nodding as he placed Ino on the ground. I'm heading to the station, so I'll leave this job to you. Itadori said, Megumi sighing at this. Yes, that's the best thing to do, but be careful. Megumi said sincerely, which brought a smile to Itadori's face. Let's get stronger together, do you think I'd dare to die? Megumi scoffed, rolling his eyes at his words. Just don't try to do everything alone. Haruta loved to toy with the weak. Hurting them, stomping on their faces, listening to their groans, and watching them bleed. It gave him a unique exhilarating feeling, nothing else could provide something like it. It was his form of fun, there was nothing else that could entertain him as much. So, seeing the brown-haired sorceress on her knees in front of him, and the blonde woman in a suit bleeding a few meters away, made him lick his lips. He was going to have a lot of fun with this, and no one would stop him. Clap. Hearing the sound of clapping suddenly, Haruta blinked in confusion. What was that? Seeing this with confusion, he raised an eyebrow in curiosity when he noticed the sorceress flash a disdainful smile. What are you laughing at, you idiot? Nobara widened her smile, her eyes moving to look at something behind him. I think you're screwed. She simply declared, Haruta noticing a shadow covering his body completely. He murmured in confusion, turning to see a huge man standing in front of him. Who the hell are you dash? But before he could even finish his question, his face was violently struck, blood spurting from his nose as his body flew away like a bullet. Clap. Nobara saw them disappear suddenly, a relieved sigh escaping her lips as she turned to see Nita writhing in pain. Damn, are you okay? Itadori walked through the crowded streets at a steady pace, his fists crushing as many curses as he saw along the way. But no matter how many he eliminated, they seemed to come from every corner, as if they were infinite. This frustrated him, but there wasn't much he could do to solve it. Even if he couldn't save everyone, at least he could do what was within his reach. Help me, help me. When a curse grabbed a man in an attempt to rip his head off with a bite, Itadori was quick to reach him, kicking the curse's head and exploding it into pieces. Jumping, he landed on a post, his eyes scanning the crowd. Cod row. But as he seemed to think about what to do, he noticed a familiar voice, his head turning to see Inumaki waving at him with a megaphone in hand. Itadori smiled at this. Alright, I'll leave this to you, Inumaki. Jumping into the crowd, Itadori ran to the station, killing a few curses before finally reaching the stairs of Shibuya Station. Don't move. Itadori heard Inumaki's commanding voice, the hairs on his body standing on end as he remembered something he had thought about the technique. If he said something like, testicular torsion, would it work? Damn, that's sinister. He laughed nervously, jumping down the entire staircase at once. Days earlier, Jujutsu school. Tell me, Nanami. Sitting in the teacher's lounge, Nanami was reading a newspaper unwaveringly, his calm gaze never disappearing from his face, even with Satoru Gojo completely invading his personal space, asking into his ear. What do you think of Yuji? Nanami didn't react to the question, simply pushing Gojo away with his hand while keeping his attention on the newspaper. You've asked me this before. Gojo sat down in a chair and stretched out his legs, completely relaxing. As a sorcerer, what do you think of him as a sorcerer? He rephrased the question. Nanami stopped reading, his eyes narrowing as he seemed to think seriously. As a sorcerer, you say. He closed his newspaper, setting it aside as he crossed his arms. I can say that he is a sorcerer with potential and mature for his age. Gojo nodded satisfactorily. That's it? Nanami was silent for a moment, his mind recalling the times he saw the boy training with the other students. His abilities also stand out, which is great for a sorcerer. Oh. Gojo seemed really impressed with the compliment. Itadori appeared to be in a good light to Nanami. Do you think he can surpass you in physical enhancement? Nanami blinked at this, his head turning to face the sorcerer with confusion on his face. Surpass me in enhancement? He already has. Present. The instant Itadori stepped into the deeper zone of the station, he immediately narrowed his eyes when he noticed someone waiting for him. He saw his hair tied in a strange way and the mark on his face that made him unmistakable. Choso, that was the name of the one waiting for him. Unfortunately, considering the anger that surged on his face the instant he saw him, he didn't seem to want to welcome him. Itadori prepared himself the moment Choso clasped his hands together, his eyes widening when a jet of blood flew at him like a bullet. This startled the young sorcerer, who, not expecting such ease, barely dodged the attack, a cut appearing on his forehead as the attack grazed him. It's even faster than those two's attacks, he noted, his attention turning back to Choso to see him forming a small sphere of blood in his hands. I can't let him maintain the distance. Itadori exploded forward, reaching Choso the moment the man clasped his hands together once more. I won't let you. Itadori attacked with a punch, his fist hitting Choso's hands and pushing them up, making the jet of blood hit the ceiling. Damn. Choso growled, quickly taking a stance and attacking Itadori with a punch, only for the boy to grab his fist and push him back with a well-placed elbow to his chest. Choso choked on this but didn't seem too shaken as he just looked at Itadori with eyes full of hatred. Troublesome. Itadori sighed, the blood from the cut on his forehead running down his face to his chin. I think even if I enhance my body to the maximum, that piercing blood could still go through my arms. I need to be very careful, the last thing I want is to have my liver pierced. I need to take him to the bathroom as soon as possible. There's something I want to ask you. Dropping his stance, Choso seemed to calm down, which made Itadori raise an eyebrow. Tell me, my younger brothers, did they leave any last words with you? Itadori looked at Choso seriously, his eyes narrowing as his fists tightened. Since that fight, he had made an effort not to think about it, but at this point, it was already impossible. Those two, they should be his brothers, after all, they were children of the same being. Itadori could have made an effort to try to make them allies, but he was blinded by his goals at that moment and focused only on retrieving Sukuna's finger. Maybe if he hadn't been selfish, things would have been better, and thinking about it, he could say. He felt bad about their deaths. But what was done was done. The past was immutable, it was no use lamenting anymore. No. But they fought for each other till the end. Choso observed that in silence, his features changing, while the mark on his face seemed to follow his mood. Cursed energy exploded from his body, emitting a hostile pressure that made Itadori prepare himself. You bastard, I'll make you pay. Choso growled, jumping back while forming a sphere of blood. But even if he backed off, Itadori didn't care, even if it put him at a disadvantage. Instead, he focused on observing Choso's attack preparation process, his eyes narrowing as he saw the Death Painter clasping his hands in anticipation of the shot. And seeing the blood being shot at him, Itadori opened his eyes in recognition, dodging the attack by a hair while advancing at full speed. I think I get it now. With his eyes showing focus, Itadori reached Choso in the blink of an eye, attacking with a punch that hit the man squarely on the chin. Choso was stunned by the punch but wasn't prevented from retaliating when he turned to Itadori and pushed him back with a kick. Condense the blood, and use a small point between the palms to shoot. Itadori realized as a cut appeared on his arm from the previous attack, the boy guiding the blood to run down to his palm. I can see it now.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.